Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepless Voyager, a quiet corner where your thoughts can unwind and travel becomes a lullaby. Tonight's journey takes us into Ireland, not the glossy postcard island of bright summer fields and tourist crowds, but the quieter Ireland that appears when mist thickens, when rain hums a steady rhythm on the roof, and when the land seems to breathe slowly, as though it too is settling down for the night. If you enjoy these calm wanderings, you're welcome to like or subscribe, only if it feels right, and if you'd like to share where and when you're listening, leave a little note in the comments. It's always a joy to see the constellation of moments we gather from. Someone in Tokyo just before dawn. Someone in Toronto watching the snow outside. Someone in Hanoi under a humming fan. Each of us scattered, but drifting together on the same road. Now, dim the lights, perhaps pour yourself a cup of tea, or let the quiet fan in your room become tonight's soft background music. There's no rush to stay awake. If your thoughts wander, or if sleep steals you away early, that's perfectly fine. The journey will continue gently on your behalf, the way the mist keeps moving even if you close your eyes. And so we begin. Imagine the outline of a small campervan parked on the edge of a narrow road in the west of Ireland. It isn't a grand machine, more a sturdy companion painted in soft whites and greens, with a window that reflects the faint silver of the mist. The rain has already begun its slow percussion, tapping against the roof, gentle and consistent, like a musician who never grows tired of repeating the same soothing beat. Inside, the air is warm, carrying the faint aroma of tea brewed earlier, mingling with the earthy scent of wool blankets. The van hums faintly when the engine starts, a sound that is neither mechanical nor intrusive, but closer to the purr of an animal content to curl by the fire. As you settle into the seat, you notice how the world outside has blurred. The mist drifts across the road like veils pulled slowly from left to right, sometimes hiding the hills, sometimes revealing them in partial glimpses, as though they're shy giants only daring to show their shoulders and never their full faces. The wipers move back and forth in their hypnotic rhythm, squeaking softly, carving momentary windows through the condensation. With each sweep, you catch a glimpse of stone walls, green fields, a wandering sheep with wool dampened and heavy. Then the window closes again, replaced by fog and water, until the next clearing stroke. The Irish have a saying, you can have 4 seasons in a single day. But on nights like this, it seems as though the seasons have agreed to take a rest together. Autumn's mist, winter's chill, spring's greenness, and summer's damp sweetness all folded into one atmosphere. You breathe in and realise how the air here tastes different. Cool, metallic, tinged with salt, from the distant Atlantic, and earthy, as though it carries the memory of peat bogs and rain-soaked soil. Inside the van, though, everything is a contrast. The seat beneath you is warm, the blanket across your lap holds the faint smell of lavender, and the steaming cup by your side lets off little curls of vapour, like miniature ghosts that vanish before you can grasp them. Outside, the land may be raw, but inside it is all comfort and stillness. That balance, wildness on the other side of the glass and coziness where you sit, is the true beginning of this Irish drive. As the campervan rolls forward, the road curves gently through a valley. You feel the soft rocking motion, like being cradled on the lap of the land itself. There's no urgency to the pace. Irish roads rarely allow it, especially the ones edged by moss-covered walls and guarded by sheep who claim the right of way. Tonight, no other cars appear. No headlights pierce the fog. It feels, for a moment, that the road belongs entirely to you. Though of course, in Ireland, the land never truly belongs to anyone. It is loaned, shared, sung about, and passed on. The headlights spread a pale, golden cone ahead of you, catching raindrops that sparkle briefly before sliding away. On either side the hills rise, soft mounds clothed in grass, their tops hidden. Every so often, a stream cuts down the slope, rushing toward the unseen ocean, its sound faint but persistent, like the breathing of the earth. You imagine the countless years these waters have traced the same paths, carving the valleys, polishing stones, feeding the moss that now glows faintly in the dim light. The deeper you go, the more you sense the layers of time. A ruined cottage appears, its roof long collapsed, its stones half sunk into the ground. Once, a family would have gathered there by a peat fire, listening to the rain just as you do now. Their laughter and their grief would have mixed with the same mist that now strokes your window. The house may be empty, but its presence is like a quiet witness, reminding you that the road is not new. It is stitched with the footsteps of centuries. And yet, despite that weight of history, the night feels anything but heavy. The rain's rhythm remains light, playful, like fingers tapping gently on a drum. The mist swirls in patterns that seem to shift with your breath, and as you look out through the small circle cleared by the wipers, you realise how soothing it is to see the world in fragments. You don't need to take in every hill or every wall. The small glimpses are enough, each one like a frame in a moving painting. There is no need to chase a destination tonight. The joy lies in the act of moving slowly, of hearing the steady hum beneath you, of feeling the air grow warmer inside while the outside world remains damp and cool. You are both traveller and passenger, both awake and nearly dreaming. And that balance, held gently like the space between raindrops, is what makes this drive a lullaby. So let the road curve onward. Let the mist fold and unfold like a great grey curtain. Let the rain continue its endless song. You're safe inside this van, accompanied by quiet hills, wandering sheep, and the comfort of knowing that Ireland, even when unseen, holds you close. Tonight the land will guide you not just through valleys and villages, but toward rest itself. And as you lean back, feeling your shoulders soften, your breath lengthen, and your mind slow to match the rhythm of the wipers, you realise the journey has already begun, and you do not need to do anything more than be carried by it. The road has begun to move beneath you now, the campervan humming in its steady rhythm, a sound that is both mechanical and strangely human, as though the engine were breathing along with you, in and out, never hurried, never forced. The headlights paint a pale arc ahead, catching raindrops that flash briefly like tiny sparks before sliding into the darkness again. You are not rushing. You're not even aiming to arrive anywhere in particular tonight. This drive is about the journey itself, the way the wheels roll over damp asphalt, the way the mist folds around you like soft fabric, the way the inside of the van becomes its own cocoon of warmth, carrying you through the ancient land. As you sit back and notice the subtle vibration of the seat, you might imagine the entire campervan as a moving cradle, rocking slowly with the road's gentle curves. There is something deeply calming in the way the suspension sways when you take a bend, or the way the tyres give off a hushed sound when water gathers on the surface. It is as if the land itself wants to soothe you, rocking you with the patience of someone who has seen countless generations come and go, someone who knows that nothing urgent needs to be done tonight except to keep moving forward softly. Your hand reaches for the cup resting in the holder by your side. The tea you brewed earlier is still warm enough to let off faint curls of steam, carrying with it the grassy, slightly floral scent of chamomile. The smell blends with the earthy dampness that seeps in from outside whenever the van takes in fresh air through the vents. Together they form a fragrance that is uniquely Irish, the sweetness of comfort wrapped around the wildness of soil and rain. You take a sip and for a moment you're reminded of sitting by a fireplace in some cottage, even though here you are carried through the mist instead. Through the windshield the landscape emerges in fragments. The wipers move with their steady squeak, clearing away water long enough for your eyes to catch glimpses. A stone wall on the left, dark with moss, rising only waist-high but stretching far into the distance, dividing fields in the way these walls have for centuries. A tree on the right, its branches twisted into shapes that look almost like hands raised toward the fog. A single sheep standing still in the drizzle, unmoving except for the slow tilt of its head as it watches you pass. Each image vanishes as quickly as it appears, swallowed back by mist. But that is what makes them beautiful. You are never overwhelmed with too much detail at once. You are given only fragments, as though the land itself wishes to tell its story slowly, one sentence at a time. You realise that here, even silence is not empty. It is filled with the soft patter of rain on the roof, the occasional trickle of water running down the sides of the glass, the steady breathing of the van's engine, and the occasional sigh of wind through cracks in the hills. These sounds create a natural orchestra, one without conductor or audience, but with a harmony that feels timeless. If you listen closely, you might imagine that the land has been playing the same music since long before roads or campervans existed, and it will continue long after. Tonight you're simply invited to sit in the front row, wrapped in a blanket, eyes half closed, listening. The road begins to rise slightly, lifting you into higher ground. The mist thickens here, but rather than obscuring, it feels more like an invitation to imagine. When you cannot see the details, your mind begins to supply them. Perhaps there are ruins hidden just beyond the field, the roofless frame of an old abbey where monks once sang in the candlelight. Perhaps there is a circle of stones, weathered and forgotten, where villagers once gathered to tell stories or to mark the passing of seasons. Or perhaps it is nothing more than grass and soil, and yet, in Ireland, even grass feels like it carries memory. The hum of the van continues, patient and reassuring. You notice the way the headlights shine against the low mist, turning the fog into something golden, almost like lantern light. It reminds you of evenings long ago when people carried lamps through lanes and fields, their small circles of glow moving gently through darkness. In some ways, you're part of that same tradition, except your lantern is mounted at the front of this quiet vehicle, and it stretches ahead in a steady cone. The thought makes you smile, not outwardly perhaps, but inwardly, in that slow kind of smile that doesn't need to move your lips because it warms you from the inside. Soon you notice a river running parallel to the road. Its waters are dark but not heavy. They shimmer faintly with the reflection of your headlights, then vanish into the black again. You roll the window down just enough to let in the sound, and there it is. The liquid song of water rushing over stones, steady, tireless, unbothered by the rain because rain is what feeds it. The sound blends with the rain on the roof, creating layers of rhythm, the tapping above, the rushing beside, the humming beneath. Together they form something you cannot call silence, and yet you cannot call noise either. It is somewhere in between, a soundscape that relaxes you precisely because it has no urgency. You pull the window back up, the air inside warming again. Outside, the hills begin to close in, their silhouettes only partly visible through the drifting fog. The peaks do not show themselves, but you can feel their presence, the way one senses someone in a room even with eyes closed. They are guardians more than obstacles, surrounding the road, standing watch as you move slowly through. Their hidden tops might be dusted with snow, or they might simply disappear into endless mist. You cannot tell, and you do not need to. It is enough to know they are there, resting, immense, yet gentle tonight. Inside the van, the soft light of a small lantern glows against the wooden panelling. The glow reflects in the window so that when you glance out you see both the misty fields and the warm echo of your own safe interior, layered together as though the outside world and the inside world have agreed to meet halfway. It is a reminder that you're not separated from the land but carried through it, wrapped by it, part of its story for this single night. And as the road continues to wind onward, you realise that you do not need to think about where it ends. The destination is not important. What matters is the rhythm of rain, the warmth of the tea, the gentle hum of the engine, and the soft cloak of mist that makes the world appear like a dream. In that dream, you're not a stranger. You're simply another traveller, welcomed by hills, greeted by sheep, and accompanied by waters that have always sung the same tune. So breathe slowly, let the van carry you, and allow Ireland to unfold at its own pace. The road awaits, not to take you somewhere else, but to remind you that being carried is enough. The road dips now, carrying you into a valley where the mist thins just enough to reveal the colours beneath it. It is said often, sometimes jokingly, that Ireland holds 40 shades of green. The phrase has become part of tourist brochures, song lyrics, and postcards, but as you look out through the glass, it no longer feels like a slogan. It feels like an observation drawn directly from the land. The green here is not uniform. It is layered, shifting, breathing. Some patches glow bright and fresh, like the skin of an apple just picked, while others deepen into near black, heavy with water and shadow. Between them are shades that defy easy description. Greens touched with grey, greens warmed by brown soil, greens that seem to shimmer with a hint of yellow when the mist allows the light through. Stone walls run across these fields, dividing them into small plots. They look like lines sketched by an old hand, slightly crooked, slightly crumbling, but stubbornly enduring. The walls are capped with moss and lichen, so that even stone seems softened, as though the land refuses to let any edge remain harsh. You imagine the effort it once took to lift these stones, one after another, building not just barriers but signatures on the land, markers of human persistence woven into the fabric of hillsides. Sheep move across the slopes in no particular hurry. Their wool is damp from the drizzle, but they appear undisturbed, heads bowed as they graze. From a distance they look like small white flecks on a vast canvas, almost like stars scattered across the green. They move slowly, and in their slowness there is something contagious. You find your own breathing falling into rhythm with their pace, as though the flock has decided that time will be measured not in minutes or hours tonight, but in the steady lowering of heads to grass. The mist curls low across the valley floor. It does not roll quickly like a storm cloud. It drifts with patience like smoke that has forgotten where its fire began. Every now and then the headlights cut through, and you glimpse a sudden brightness in the grass, or a glistening thread of water running down a slope. Then the fog folds back again, hiding the detail, leaving you with impressions instead of clear outlines. There is a softness in not seeing everything at once, in allowing your eyes to be given only fragments. It means that every new glimpse feels like a gift, something revealed at the pace of a lullaby. From within the van, the contrast is comforting. The windows fog slightly at the edges, blurring the already blurred view. The lantern light glows faintly against the glass, and for a moment the outside world looks like a painting hung in a dim gallery. Shapes, colours, textures, all softened by distance and mist. You sip the last of your tea, feeling the warmth slip through you. The van hums, steady and patient, like a companion who knows exactly how to keep the silence full without breaking it. The valley narrows, the road pressed close between the fields, and the gentle slopes that rise on either side. A single tree stands near the edge of the road, its trunk thick and twisted, its branches stretched in wild directions as though shaped by countless winds. Even in the half-light, it holds presence, an old sentinel that has seen rain fall for centuries. Its leaves, though few this time of year, are deep green, almost black, and when the headlights sweep past, the moisture on them glitters like tiny beads. You wonder what stories the tree could tell if it had a voice, perhaps of farmers leaning against it while resting, perhaps of birds nesting in its limbs, perhaps even of travellers long ago stopping here the way you have, to listen to the land before moving on. The rain, steady all evening, shifts slightly now. It is lighter, falling more like mist than drops, so that when it touches the windshield it slides rather than splashes. The wipers continue their rhythm, gentle arcs across the glass. Their squeak is almost musical, like a bow drawn across strings. Each sweep clears a space, and each space becomes a window into another moment. A patch of moss, a glint of water, the rounded back of a sheep, the outline of a cottage far across the valley. Then the fog returns, erasing the detail until the next sweep. It is a rhythm of appearing and vanishing like breath itself. You lean back further, allowing your shoulders to sink, and the road carries you deeper into green. The thought crosses your mind that this land is not green despite the mist and the rain, but because of it. Every drop that taps on the roof above you is part of what creates the lushness outside. Without the constant falling of water, the shades would fade, the moss would dry, the fields would harden. What some might call dreary weather becomes in truth the brush that paints the landscape. The drizzle is not an interruption, but the artist's hand, always at work. And in this realization there is a kind of gratitude. Gratitude for rain that nourishes, for mist that softens, for sheep that graze without hurry, for walls that remind you of endurance, for greens that cannot be captured by a single word. The valley itself feels like a cradle, and you're carried through it, not as a visitor hurrying from place to place, but as a guest moving at the pace of the land. The campervan takes a gentle bend, and for a moment the mist thins enough to reveal the far side of the valley. There, the fields rise into a patchwork of greens stitched together by stone walls, each square or rectangle uneven but harmonious, like pieces of a quilt made not for display but for comfort. A small herd of cattle stands near a gate, their dark shapes softened by the fog, their breath rising visibly into the air. Beyond them, the slope continues upward until it is swallowed once again by mist. You catch this image for a heartbeat, and then it vanishes, as if the land wanted only to show you enough to know it is alive. As the van hums onward, you find yourself drifting into a state that is neither fully awake nor fully asleep. The rain, the greens, the sheep, the walls, they form a rhythm deeper than sound, a rhythm that the body recognizes. You close your eyes for a moment, and the images continue behind your lids. Moss glowing faintly, sheep grazing slowly, walls stretching endlessly, mist curling patiently. The drive continues, but already you are carried by it, gently, steadily, into the heart of Ireland's green. The rain changes as the evening deepens. It has been falling since the start of your drive, first in fine threads that drifted through the mist, then in steady drops that tapped against the windshield, and now in a heavier rhythm that makes the van feel even cozier. Rain in Ireland is never just one thing. It has personalities, moods, and temperaments. The way people in a small village might all share the same last name, but differ in the details of how they speak, how they laugh, or how they greet you at the door. Tonight the rain is not angry, nor is it hurried. It is persistent, gentle, and constant, as if it has chosen to keep you company for as long as you travel. On the roof of the campervan it plays a song. Each drop lands with a soft pat, and together they form a rhythm that repeats endlessly but never quite the same way twice. Some drops are large and land with a hollow sound, others are tiny and quick, merging into a hiss that fades before your ear can focus on it. The roof becomes a drum, the windshield a harp of streaking lines, and the wipers the bow of a fiddle, moving back and forth with patient timing. If you listen long enough, you can almost convince yourself that this is not weather at all, but music played by the land itself. The Irish like to say you can have 4 seasons in a single day, and though the saying is often delivered with a shrug or a smile, tonight you sense the truth of it. At moments the rain eases, and the mist thins enough for the fields to brighten with sudden bursts of light. Then, without warning, the clouds gather again, and the drizzle becomes a soft curtain. There is no strict division between one kind of weather and another. Instead, they fold into each other the way colours blend in a watercolour painting, edges soft and blurred. What might feel unpredictable elsewhere becomes, in Ireland, a kind of lullaby, a gentle reminder that nothing is fixed, that everything shifts and drifts, and that there is peace in letting the changes pass through you. Inside the van, you are safe. The walls creak faintly when the wind nudges them, but the sound is reassuring, like the sigh of an old house settling into itself at night. The lantern you lit glows steadily, casting a golden hue that makes the space feel smaller and warmer, a cocoon against the cool world outside. When the rain grows heavier, the glow seems even more precious, a reminder that coziness exists not in the absence of storms, but in the way you carry light with you through them. Your breath falls into rhythm with the rain. Inhale as drops scatter across the roof. Exhale as the wipers sweep across the glass. There is no effort required. The body seems to recognize the pattern on its own. You might notice how your shoulders soften without you telling them to, how your hands unclench, how your eyes grow heavier. Rain has a way of asking nothing from you but presence, and in return it offers rest. Through the windshield, the world is transformed. The road is slick, shining under the headlights as though painted with liquid ink. Puddles gather in shallow dips, their surfaces trembling when struck by new drops. Grass along the edges bends under the weight of water, then springs back when the rain eases. Even the sheep, usually indifferent to weather, have moved closer to hedges and walls for shelter, their wool darkened but their pace unchanged. The whole valley seems wrapped in silver threads, stitched together by water. You pass a small bridge, its stones dark and glistening. Beneath it, a stream rushes, its sound amplified by the rain above, the two rhythms layering together like voices in harmony. You imagine how many times this bridge has seen nights like this. Carts rolling over it long ago, farmers leading their animals, children running across with laughter that echoed off the stones. Tonight it carries only you, the hum of the van blending with the rain. Yet the bridge does not care. It holds you as it held them, steady and enduring. There is comfort in contrasts. Outside, the rain falls without pause, soaking soil, filling rivers, cloaking hills. Inside, the blanket on your lap is dry, your tea still warm, the lantern glowing softly. Outside, the world is untamed, unpredictable, shifting. Inside, the rhythm is steady, measured, reliable. You realise that it is precisely the wildness outside that makes the coziness inside so precious. The van becomes not just transport but sanctuary, a moving hearth carrying warmth into the mist. The thought crosses your mind that the land itself might be resting. The hills are wrapped in fog like blankets, the fields darkened as though tucked under covers, the sheep slowed to their quiet grazing. Even the rivers seem calmer under the veil of rain, their voices softened into murmurs. Perhaps the rain is not just weather, but the lullaby of the land, urging everything, stone, soil, animal and traveller, into the same gentle rhythm. You lean your head back and close your eyes for a moment. The sound continues. The steady patter on the roof, the sweep of the wipers, the faint hum of the engine. Together they create something close to silence, but not empty silence. Silence filled with presence, with texture, with comfort. You could drift here, eyes half shut, knowing that even if you sleep for a while, the road will carry on beneath you, steady and sure until you wake again. When you open your eyes once more, the headlights catch droplets suspended in the air. They glitter briefly before vanishing into the dark like tiny fireflies conjured only for a moment. The mist curls around them, shifting shapes you cannot name, dissolving before they are complete. The road continues to wind, and the rain continues its song. You're exactly where you need to be, inside, safe, carried by rhythm, accompanied by rain. And so you let the night go on. The van hums, the lantern glows, the rain sings, and you, without effort, find yourself moving deeper into rest. The road begins to climb. You feel it first, not in your eyes, but in your body. The subtle pull of gravity as the van leans forward, the engine giving a deeper hum as it carries you upward. The mist thickens once again, swirling in low clouds that seem to have drifted down from the sky to rest against the shoulders of the hills. These are not sharp peaks that pierce the heavens, but wide and steady forms, ancient and worn, their strength shown not through drama but through endurance. They rise with patience, and tonight they wear their cloaks of fog the way old giants wear heavy coats, comfortably, as though it is their natural state. Ireland's mountains are not the tallest in the world, yet they carry a presence that makes them feel vast. Part of it comes from their age, the way they have been shaped by centuries of wind and rain, carved slowly until their ridges are softened and their valleys deepened. Part of it comes from the weather, which rarely allows them to be seen fully at once. Instead, they reveal themselves in fragments. A dark slope here, a ridgeline there, a faint outline of a summit that appears briefly when the mist loosens its grip. What you see is never the whole mountain, but a suggestion of it, as though the land is offering you hints rather than answers. Folklore has long filled these valleys, and on nights like this it is easy to understand why. When you look into the drifting fog, you can almost believe that giants rest within it. The Irish legends tell of figures so large that hills were shaped by their footsteps, lakes formed from the basins of their drinking vessels, and valleys carved by their battles. The mountains you see tonight, half hidden, half imagined, feel like the silhouettes of such beings lying under blankets of mist. Their backs rise and fall in gentle slopes, their heads hidden, their forms stretching beyond sight. If you listen closely, you might even think the low rumble of the van's engine is not mechanical at all, but the echo of some sleeping breath within the hills. The rain softens as you climb higher, turning into a fine drizzle that the wind carries sideways across the road. Droplets slide along the windows like threads of silver, merging and separating, tracing slow, uncertain patterns. The wipers move with their steady rhythm, clearing a view that is never entirely clear but always intriguing. Each sweep gives you a new glimpse, a dark rock face streaked with water, a patch of heather glowing purple against grey, a sudden flash of white where a stream tumbles down a slope and disappears into the fog. None of these glimpses last long, but that is part of their beauty. They are like fragments of a story whispered in pieces, leaving you to imagine the rest. The air grows cooler as you ascend, and you notice how it changes inside the van as well. Though the heater hums softly, there is still a freshness in each breath you take, a crispness that makes the tea in your cup taste sweeter when you sip it. You feel the warmth of the drink slide into you, contrasting with the chill of the mist outside, and the combination is soothing, like sitting beside a fire while a cold wind rattles the windows. Comfort is never as deep as when it stands against discomfort, and tonight you are wrapped in that contrast, the wildness of the mountains outside and the calm sanctuary inside the van. The road narrows here, curving between steep slopes. Stone walls line some stretches, their tops dripping with water, their surfaces dark with moss. In other places the land falls away, and though you cannot see far through the mist, you sense valleys yawning below, filled with rivers and lakes that glimmer faintly when the fog thins. It feels as though you are suspended between worlds, the solid presence of the mountain rising beside you, and the uncertain openness falling away into shadow on the other side. Yet there is no fear in this balance. The road itself holds you steady, a ribbon of grey winding through the white, and the van hums patiently along it, unhurried, untroubled. As you drive deeper into the mountains, the soundscape shifts. The rain is lighter, so you begin to hear more of the world around you. The stream you glimpsed earlier becomes a rushing voice as the road passes closer to it. Water tumbles over, rocks, echoing against the slopes, its energy untamed yet oddly harmonious with the quiet pace of your drive. Higher still, the wind finds a way into the gaps between ridges, and it whistles softly, carrying with it the faint scent of peat and heather. The hills themselves seem to speak in low tones, their voices hidden in the elements, a language of stone and water that you can feel, even if you cannot translate. Legends say that in mist like this, the line between the seen and the unseen grows thin. Farmers once spoke of fairies and spirits that travelled with the fog, appearing only in glimpses, disappearing before you could be sure. On a night such as this, you understand why those stories were told. The mist does not just hide, it also creates. It paints shapes that shift and dissolve, silhouettes that could be rocks or could be figures watching from the distance, movements that might be windblown grass or something else entirely. You find no unease in these illusions, only curiosity, only a sense that the land has more to it than what meets the eye. At one bend, the mist lifts just enough for you to see the far side of a valley. The slopes are quilted with greens, stitched together by stone walls, and dotted with sheep that appear as tiny white specks. Beyond them, another mountain rises, its peak swallowed in cloud, its base dark with shadow. For a brief moment, the entire scene appears like a painting unveiled, and then the mist folds over it again, as if the curtain has been drawn. You're left with only the memory of what you saw, which somehow feels more lasting than the image itself. The van hums onward, carrying you higher, deeper into the quiet heart of the mountains. Each turn of the road feels like a new stanza in a poem, each sweep of the wipers like a turning page. You are both reader and listener, both traveller and dreamer. The land speaks not in sentences but in glimpses, and tonight you're content to let it speak slowly, in its own time. Inside, the lantern still glows, the blanket still warms your lap, the tea still carries its quiet sweetness, and outside the mountains remain veiled, immense, patient, eternal. You're not here to conquer them, nor even to see them fully. You're here to be carried among them, to rest in their presence, to listen to their silence, and to allow their cloaked shapes to guide you deeper into the calm that they have known for ages. And so the drive continues, winding upward, through fog and drizzle, through legend and silence, through the steady rhythm of a land that has never hurried. The mountains keep their secrets, the mist keeps its veil, and you, inside the cocoon of the van, keep your peace. The mountains begin to loosen their hold, and the road slides gently downward until it finds the company of a river. You sense it before you see it, first in the faint shift of sound, a steady murmur that grows louder as the van rounds a bend, then in the cooler air that drifts in whenever you crack the window, tinged with the freshness of moving water. When the headlights sweep forward, the river appears alongside you, glistening like a strip of liquid glass laid carefully at the valley's base. It flows steadily, neither rushing nor sluggish, carrying with it the reflection of the mist above, so that at times it looks less like water and more like another sky stretched across the earth. The road follows the river's curves, bending where it bends, narrowing where the bank presses close, widening when the valley opens. You feel the rhythm of this companionship, the way the wheels trace one line while the current traces another, both moving forward, both unhurried. The sound of the water is constant now, layered beneath the rain on the roof and the hum of the engine, a deeper note that gives the whole night a sense of harmony. It is not loud, but it does not need to be. It is presence more than volume, a reminder that something larger than you is flowing just beyond the window. Every so often, the headlights catch ripples spreading outward from the bank, circles expanding into the darkness until they dissolve. You wonder what made them. Perhaps a fish leaping for an insect, perhaps a bird dipping low, perhaps nothing at all but the small movements of water on stone. The ripples shimmer for a moment, then vanish, leaving the surface smooth again. They feel like small reminders of how quickly disturbances fade, how every moment becomes calm if given enough time. Birds cry in the distance, faint notes carried on the mist. Their calls echo across the valley, sometimes sharp, sometimes mournful, never long. They remind you that even in this quiet night, the land is alive, that wings are cutting through the fog above the river even if you cannot see them. Perhaps they are curlews, known for their haunting calls that sound almost like voices. Perhaps they are owls, gliding silently until they choose to announce themselves. Whatever they are, their cries do not disturb the peace. They add to it, as though the night itself has chosen to sing in many voices at once. You imagine leaning out the window, letting the cool air brush against your face, letting the smell of wet grass and river stones surround you. The mist would cling to your skin, soft and cold, while the sound of the water would seem even closer, filling your ears, steady and calming. You do not need to open the window far, just a crack is enough to invite the night in. It arrives not as a rush, but as a gentle drift, the way fog slips under a doorframe without effort. At one point the road crosses a small bridge, a modest arch of stone darkened by centuries of rain. The headlights sweep over it, and for a moment you glimpse the water rushing beneath, tumbling over rocks, splitting into currents that weave together again downstream. The bridge feels ancient, as though it has been here longer than the road itself, holding the weight of carriages once, of footsteps before that. And now the steady roll of your wheels. Passing over it feels like being linked to every traveller who ever crossed here, each one carried forward by the same river song. The mist thickens again, curling over the river until it looks as though the water has risen into the air, blurring the line between liquid and cloud. The headlights cut narrow tunnels through it, revealing fragments. A branch hanging low over the bank, a gate standing crooked near a field, a reflection that lingers even after the object itself has passed from sight. Each fragment feels complete in itself, as though you are meant to see only this much, no more. The river flows on, and so does the van, and between them the night feels endless. The rain eases for a few minutes, enough that you can hear the river more clearly. Its voice is textured, sometimes a steady hush, sometimes a low gurgle where stones break the surface, sometimes a rushing note where the current tightens. It is a language you cannot translate, but you can feel its meaning all the same. It says movement, it says patience, it says that everything finds its way forward eventually. You imagine how long this river has been carving its path, long before roads, long before bridges, long before names were given to the valleys. It has been here, flowing, singing, resting only in winter when frost stills its surface. You take another sip of tea, the warmth almost surprising against the cool air that has seeped in. The lantern still glows beside you, and in its reflection on the window, the river and the light merge for a moment, water and fire side by side. The effect is brief, but it lingers in your thoughts. The outside world and the inside world are not separate. They lean into each other, reflections woven together in glass. Further along, the road rises slightly above the river, giving you a wider view. In the brief clarity offered by the wipers, you see the surface stretching like a ribbon, silvered by mist, scattered with the faint shadows of trees that grow along the banks. Their trunks are dark, their branches twisted, and their roots seem to grip the water itself, as though unwilling to let it pass without acknowledgement. The scene is fleeting, revealed and then hidden again, but the impression remains. The world is holding the river even as the river carries the world. The van hums steadily, the wheels keeping time with the flow beside you. You realise that the drive and the river are not so different, both moving, both carrying, both endless in their patience. And you, inside your cocoon of warmth, are being carried too, part of the same rhythm, part of the same night. As the road curves onward, the river remains at your side, sometimes close enough that you feel you could reach out and touch it, sometimes slipping away into the fog only to return again. It is a companion, quiet but constant, reminding you that every journey is eased when something flows beside you. You may not see it always, but you know it is there, steady as breath, patient as sleep. And so the van rolls on, the rain returns in its gentle tapping, the mist folds around the valley, and the river sings beside you, carrying you deeper into the quiet heart of Ireland's night. The road leaves the river slowly, as though reluctant to part ways, but before long the sound of moving water fades behind you, and the valley begins to open wider. The mist shifts, rising and falling in slow curtains, until a dark expanse reveals itself to the left of the road. At first you think it might be another patch of shadow, the slope of a field or the outline of a bog. Then the headlights catch the faint shimmer of water, and you realise you're looking at a lake, a lough, as the Irish call it. Its surface is so still that it seems not quite real, a sheet of glass laid across the land, catching only the dim reflections of fog and sky. The van hums gently as you slow down, allowing yourself to take in the view. The rain has eased for now, and in the quiet the lake becomes even more striking. The air is cool, filled with the faint mineral scent of wet stone and the subtle sweetness of moss. You roll the window down slightly, and the silence that enters is profound. The world outside is not silent because it is empty, but because everything has settled into stillness. The sheep are far on the hillsides, their shapes hidden. The birds that called earlier seem to have withdrawn into roosts. Even the wind is quiet here, leaving only the vast presence of water lying calmly in its basin. You watch the surface, and in it you see not only the mist drifting above, but the pale glow of the lantern behind you, faintly reflected in the glassy black. It is like staring into another world, one that mirrors your own, but with differences too subtle to name. You find yourself leaning closer, eyes following the faint shapes that appear and vanish with the shifting fog. The line between the lake and the sky blurs until you cannot tell where one ends and the other begins. It feels less like looking at a body of water and more like staring into a dream that has chosen to take the shape of water tonight. Stories have long been told about lakes such as these, and as you gaze out, one rises in your memory. In the Killarney region, not far from where you are driving, people once whispered of towns that had been drowned beneath the water. They said that if you listened on quiet nights, you might hear the bells of their churches tolling faintly beneath the surface. Some claimed that fishermen, rowing out at dawn, had glimpsed the outlines of towers or walls deep below, shimmering just before disappearing into the shadows. No one ever proved such tales true, yet they persist, because something about the stillness of these waters invites stories. A lake that shows you so much of the sky above seems capable of holding the past below as well. You pause the van for a moment, pulling, into a small lay-by at the side of the road. The engine softens into silence, and the absence of its hum makes the night feel even deeper. You sit in stillness, the lantern casting its faint glow inside, while outside the lake holds its own light. You close your eyes for a moment and imagine. What if you truly could hear a bell beneath the water? You tilt your head as though listening, and though no sound reaches your ears, the thought alone is enough to deepen the silence, to make it resonate with possibility. When you open your eyes again, the mist has shifted. It drifts low across the lake's surface, curling in shapes that look like figures for a moment, then dissolve into formlessness. The headlights reflect in patches of water, creating spots of pale gold that flicker as the fog moves. It feels as though the land is painting with light and shadow, revealing and concealing, giving you just enough to spark your imagination. You know that if you were to stand at the edge of the lake, you might see nothing but darkness and reflection. Yet from here, in the warmth of the van, the lake feels alive, as though it is holding something beneath its surface. waiting patiently for those willing to pause and listen. You sip what remains of your tea, its flavour softened now, more water than warmth, but still comforting. The cup rests easily in your hand, and you notice how your body mirrors the stillness outside. Your breath has slowed, your shoulders have dropped, and even your thoughts have quieted. The lake seems to lend you its calm, as though the stillness of its surface extends inward, smoothing the ripples of the mind. After some time, you start the engine again. The van hums back to life, and though the sound is gentle, it feels almost loud after the deep silence. You ease forward, the headlights sliding once more across the glassy water. For a few minutes the road clings to the shoreline, giving you shifting glimpses of the lake from different angles. Sometimes you see only darkness, sometimes a glimmer of silver where the mist has thinned, sometimes the reflection of a lone tree standing sentinel at the bank. Each view feels like a new page in the same story, familiar yet different. As the road curves away, the lake lingers in your memory. You think of the drowned town legend again, and rather than feeling eerie, it feels strangely comforting. Even if no bells ever tolled beneath the surface, the idea that people imagined them shows how deeply the land has always invited story. Still, waters ask for reflection, not just of clouds and mist, but of memory, of possibility, of dream. And tonight, you have been part of that tradition, sitting quietly by a mirror of water, imagining what it might hold beneath. The mist closes in again, and the lake disappears behind it. Yet the impression remains, as though the silence has travelled with you inside the van. The hum of the engine, the rhythm of the rain, the faint glow of the lantern, they all feel quieter now, softened by the memory of still water. The road carries you onward, deeper into Ireland's night, but part of you remains at the edge of that mirror lake, listening for a bell that may or may not ring, watching for reflections that may or may not be real, and resting in the possibility that some mysteries are best left unanswered. The road begins to climb again, leaving the mirror lake behind. The mist thins slightly as you move upward, and the landscape shifts. Where the valley had been filled with water and reflection, the ground now spreads wider, flatter, darker. You recognise the change not first by sight but by scent. The air carries a new note, earthy, damp, with a faint sweetness that reminds you of smoke and soil combined. It is the scent of bogland, and in Ireland it is a fragrance woven deep into memory, history and hearth. The headlights sweep over the ground, and you see the uneven surface of peat and moss. Pools of dark water glimmer here and there, reflecting the pale sky above like fragments of broken glass. The soil is not solid but springy, soft enough that each step would sink slightly, firm enough that it holds the landscape together. The bog stretches into the mist, its edges blurred, its boundaries undefined, as though it has no need to be precise. It simply exists, absorbing rain, holding water, shaping itself slowly over centuries. Among the muted browns and greys, patches of colour appear, small, vivid, unexpected. Heather grows here. Its blooms are soft purple that glows faintly even in the dim light. The flowers cluster in tufts, dotting the bog like embroidery on a heavy cloak, delicate stitches against a coarse fabric. They offer contrast, not dominance, as though their purpose is not to overwhelm, but to remind you that beauty persists even in landscapes that at first seem barren. The purple mixes with the deep green of moss, the dull red of sedges, the golden flicker of gorse further up the slopes, until the bog becomes its own kind of tapestry. You slow the van, allowing yourself to notice these details, to take them in without hurry. The rain falls lightly again, thin enough that it does not disturb the silence, heavy enough that it keeps the colours glistening. Each drop lands on moss, on heather, on pools of water, absorbed without complaint, as though the bog welcomes every gift from the sky. It is said that bogs grow slowly, a few millimetres each year, layer upon layer of moss and plant pressed into peat. What you see here tonight is not a surface formed quickly, but the patient accumulation of centuries, a landscape built by time itself. The scent reminds you of fires. In cottages across Ireland, peat once burned in hearths, cut from bogs like this, dried and stacked carefully beside homes. Its smoke was distinctive, rich and earthy, filling kitchens with warmth in winter months. Even now, many people recall it as the fragrance of childhood, the smell of evenings, when families gathered by the fire listening to stories while rain tapped against the roof. As you drive through this bogland, you imagine those cottages, their chimneys releasing curls of smoke into misty air, their windows glowing with light, their fires fueled by the ground itself. There is quiet here that feels different from the silence of lakes. Lakes are still, reflective, holding the world like a mirror. Bogs are absorbing, muffling sound, drawing everything into their depth. Even the van's hum seems softened as it passes through this stretch, as though the land has placed a gentle hand on the world and asked it to lower its voice. You imagine stepping outside, placing a foot on the springy ground, feeling it give slightly beneath your weight, hearing only the faint squelch of moss and the distant drip of water. The bog does not echo. It listens, holding every sound until it disappears. Legends cling to these places too. Old tales speak of treasures hidden in bogs, offerings to gods or spirits, left in waters that never give them back. Archaeologists have indeed found objects preserved in peat, tools, ornaments, even bodies, held intact by the bog's embrace for thousands of years. Yet when you think of these stories tonight, they do not feel macabre. They feel like proof that bogs are guardians, keepers of memory, protectors of what time would otherwise erase. Driving past, you sense that you're moving beside a vast archive, not of words, but of earth and water and silence. The mist curls low across the ground, brushing against the heather. The headlights catch tiny droplets on the blooms, making them sparkle like beads of dew. You imagine bending down, brushing your hand across them, feeling the softness of the petals, the dampness of rain, the resilience of a plant that blooms even in soil as unforgiving as this. Heather has long been seen as a symbol of endurance, a reminder that beauty can grow where conditions are harsh. Its purple flowers, modest and quiet, stand here tonight as living proof. Inside the van, the lantern glows on, and the scent of peat in the air makes you think of warmth, even though you are not near a fire. The blanket across your lap feels heavier now, as though echoing the weight of the land outside. You sip again from your cup, and though the tea is nearly gone, the act itself becomes ritual, part of the rhythm of night. Rain above, mist outside, tea within, layers of comfort balancing the vastness of the bog. The road carries you across a narrow stretch where water lies close on both sides. For a moment it feels like driving on a bridge not built by human hands, but by the bog itself, raised just high enough to hold the road, leaving pools of still water to either side. The headlights slide across them, showing reflections of mist, of heather, of dark trunks leaning outward. The reflections ripple faintly, then settle again into stillness, mirrors too quiet to boast of their clarity. You breathe deeply, letting the scent of rain and peat settle into your chest. The bog does not hurry, and neither do you. It stretches onward, unfazed by time, content in its slowness, offering you a reminder that the world does not need to rush in order to endure. Here, on this road through the bog, with heather glowing faintly and rain tapping softly, you feel as though you have stepped into a space where time itself has thinned, where centuries and minutes flow together, absorbed into the same patient silence. And so the van hums forward, lantern glowing, mist folding, bog breathing quietly on either side. You're carried not just across land, but across memory, across tradition, across the patient rhythm of Earth itself. The bog stretches behind you now, fading into mist, and the road carries you upward once more. The van hums, steady as breath, as you climb into a region where the land grows rockier, the slopes steeper, the vegetation sparser. Rain continues in its familiar rhythm, sometimes tapping gently, sometimes whispering in streams down the glass. It is here, between stretches of stone wall and heather, that something catches your eye. A shape in the fog that is not natural, a silhouette that rises in straight lines where hills are curved. As the headlights sweep across it, the form becomes clearer. It is a cottage, or rather what remains of one, a small house of stone long abandoned, its roof gone, its windows dark, its walls still standing though broken in places. The mist drifts through its hollow frame, moving in and out of the open doorway as though the house itself were breathing. At first glance it seems lonely, fragile, even sad, but as you slow the van and take in the details, another impression settles over you, an impression not of despair, but of endurance. The stones that make up its walls are rough and uneven, gathered from the land around it, stacked by hand with care and necessity. They are dark now with moss and rain, but they still hold their place, clinging together against centuries of weather. The chimney stands tallest, pointing upward into the fog, a reminder that fires once burned here, that warmth once filled these rooms. You imagine how it might have looked when whole, a thatched roof glowing golden in sunlight, smoke curling from the chimney, a door that opened to laughter or voices calling in from the fields. Ireland is filled with cottages like this, ruins left from times of hardship, most often from the famine years when hunger drove families from their homes. Many emigrated, many perished, and the houses remained behind, silent witnesses to their absence. Yet as you gaze at this one tonight, you find that sorrow is not the strongest feeling it gives. Instead, you feel resilience. The cottage still stands, against rain and mist, against decades of abandonment. It has lost its roof, but not its presence. It has lost its inhabitants, but not its story. Its broken walls open not like wounds, but like arms, welcoming you into memory. The headlights sweep across the doorway again, and for a moment you imagine stepping inside. The floor would be damp now, overgrown with grass and moss, puddles gathered in hollows where the roof once sheltered. But you might also hear echoes. A child's laughter bouncing against stone, a kettle whistling over a fire, the murmur of a story told in the half-light of evening. Memory does not vanish with people. It lingers in places, in walls that held warmth, in stones that absorbed voices. Tonight, with mist curling through the doorway, it feels as though the house itself remembers. You sit back and let the van idle for a moment. The rain falls more softly now, a drizzle that clings to the windows rather than rushing down them. You think about how many travellers have passed this cottage. Farmers on carts, shepherds leading flocks, perhaps children running along the road to fetch water or deliver messages. Each one would have glanced at these walls, and each glance added another layer to its endurance. A ruin is not simply what remains, it is what continues to be seen, what continues to be acknowledged. Folklore often clings to such places. Some say that abandoned cottages are visited by spirits, not in malice but in longing, as if those who left wish to return. Others speak of fairies taking over empty homes, lighting invisible fires in chimneys at night. Standing in the presence of this ruin, you understand how such tales begin. The sight of a doorway opening into mist, the sense that silence here is full rather than empty, it all invites imagination. You feel no fear, only curiosity, only respect for the way absence can create its own kind of presence. You recall that during the famine years, people who left these homes often carried with them nothing but memory. They built new houses across the sea, in America, in Australia, but in their minds the old cottages remained, standing exactly as they had left them. To see the walls still here, still upright, feels like a quiet honouring of those memories. Perhaps that is why ruins like this are never truly erased. They're not useless stones. They're reminders, anchors in a landscape that might otherwise flow forward without pause. The lantern inside the van glows softly, and in its reflection on the window, the ruin outside seems layered with your own safe space within. The broken walls and your intact walls stand together, each holding light in its own way. You realise that the ruin does not diminish your sense of comfort, it deepens it. To see what has endured hardship makes the warmth of the blanket on your lap, the tea in your cup, the hum of the engine, feel all the more precious. The past and the present meet, not in conflict, but in quiet conversation. The rain grows heavier for a few minutes, drumming once more on the roof. Through it, you see the cottage blur and fade into mist again, its shape dissolving until only suggestion remains. You ease the van forward, and the ruin falls behind, but its impression lingers. You carry with you not sorrow but a sense of continuity, the idea that even when lives change, even when structures break, something remains. Stones hold memory, walls hold stories, and ruins remind you that endurance can be as gentle as it is strong. As the road winds on, the mist closes around you again, and the ruin vanishes completely. Yet in your mind, its broken chimney still points upward, its walls still open like arms, its doorway still breathes mist. You imagine it standing there tomorrow, next year, next century, continuing to mark the landscape, continuing to welcome every glance, every story, every pause of a traveller who lets their eyes rest on it. And you, safe inside your moving home, carry its presence with you. The cottage does not feel lonely anymore. It feels like company, silent, steadfast company, that has chosen to walk with you in memory as you continue deeper into Ireland's night. The road bends again, carrying you away from the silent cottage and into another stretch of misty valley. The van hums steadily, its headlights casting their narrow cones across stone walls and patches of grass that glisten under the drizzle. You're beginning to think that the night belongs only to you, that no other figure moves through this landscape when a shape emerges ahead. At first it seems part of the mist, a darker patch against the grey. Then the wipers clear the glass and you see the form resolve into something more distinct. A man walking slowly along the road, with a small flock of sheep gathered around him like shadows that move with their own quiet rhythm. The shepherd wears a woolen cap pulled low against the drizzle, and a long coat that looks weathered enough to have seen decades of rain. His steps are measured, unhurried, as though the pace of sheep has become the pace of his own life. The flock shuffles along the edge of the road, damp fleeces glowing faintly in the headlights, their heads lowering now and then to nibble at tufts of grass even while moving. A sheepdog runs in small arcs around them, barking occasionally but never harshly, its voice softened by mist until it sounds almost like part of the rain itself. You slow the van and ease closer, careful not to disturb their rhythm. The man glances up, and for a moment his face is lit by the glow from your lights. You see lines that speak of years outdoors, eyes that hold patience rather than hurry. He raises a hand in a simple wave, the kind of gesture that requires no words, no introduction, no explanation. You return the wave instinctively, and in that brief exchange something passes between you, an understanding that travellers on quiet roads share, a recognition that both of you are part of this night, part of this valley, each in your own way. The sheepdog circles again, guiding the flock gently to one side as you pass. Their hooves make soft tapping sounds on the wet surface mingling with the patter of rain on your roof. The smell of damp wool drifts faintly through the cracked window, earthy and raw, reminding you that this landscape is not only seen and heard, but lived in by creatures whose rhythms are older than roads or engines. As you drive slowly by, you realise how timeless this moment feels. It could be tonight, or it could be a century ago. The clothes may shift, the road may be paved rather than dirt, but the essence remains unchanged. A man, a flock, a dog, a valley filled with mist. In a world where clocks tick loudly, screens glow insistently, and time is counted in seconds, the shepherd's pace feels like a gentle rebellion. Here, time is measured not by minutes, but by the space between raindrops, by the grazing of sheep, by the distance from one stone wall to another. You reflect on how rare such slowness has become, how much of life is lived in urgency. Yet urgency has no place in this valley tonight. The shepherd does not hurry his flock, the sheep do not rush their grazing, the dog does not bark unnecessarily, and the rain does not fall any faster than it must. Even your van, though capable of speed, hums along at their rhythm, joining the cadence rather than breaking it. The headlights catch the shepherd's face again as you pass, and this time you notice the faintest smile beneath his cap. It is not wide or deliberate, more a subtle curve, but it carries warmth all the same. Perhaps he is glad to see another soul on this lonely road. Perhaps he knows that in the mist, even the briefest connection can feel like companionship. Whatever the reason, the smile lingers in your mind as you continue forward. Behind you, the flock fades back into fog, their shapes dissolving until only the occasional bark of the dog reaches your ears, and then even that fades too. Yet the impression remains, carried with you as firmly as if the shepherd were walking beside your van. You think of all the generations before him, shepherds who guided flocks through valleys, across bogs, along riverbanks. Their lives were measured in the same rhythm, step steady, sheep grazing, rain falling. The man you pass tonight is not separate from them. He is continuation, proof that some traditions need no reinvention. They endure simply by persisting. Inside the van, you adjust the blanket across your lap, letting its weight remind you of the weight of wool outside. The lantern glows steadily, its warmth echoing the small fire you imagine waiting for the shepherd at home. Perhaps his cottage lies just beyond the next hill. Perhaps his family waits there with supper warm on the hearth. Perhaps he will return with his flock and sit down by the fire, steam rising from his coat, dog curled at his feet. The thought is comforting, not because you know it is true, but because you know it is possible, and possibility itself can be as warming as certainty. The mist folds around the road again, reclaiming the space the shepherd and his sheep had occupied. Yet it feels different now. The valley no longer seems empty. It holds presence, memory, companionship, even if only for a brief moment. You realise that part of travel's quiet magic lies not in the landscapes alone, but in the lives that move through them. The people whose gestures and glances weave human threads into the fabric of hills and rain. The van hums forward, headlights tunnelling into fog, wipers marking their rhythm, rain tapping its endless song. You breathe deeply, slower now, as if your body has adopted the shepherd's pace, the sheep's calm, the valley's patience. It is a rhythm that feels not borrowed but returned, as though you always carried it within you, and only needed the sight of a man and his flock to remind you. And so the drive continues, but with a different texture now, less solitary, more shared. The shepherd has faded from view, but his presence travels with you, carried on the mist, resting in the rain, folded into the hum of your van. You realise that even a brief wave can hold the power of connection, and that sometimes the smallest gestures echo longest. Tonight, in this valley of fog and sheep, you have been reminded that no journey is truly alone. The valley narrows again, stone walls closing in on either side, until the road bends sharply, and you find yourself descending toward a scattering of lights. They are faint at first, blurred by rain and mist, but as the van rolls closer they take on colour, golden, steady, glowing against the grey. You recognise the scene before you have even fully arrived. A village, small and tucked into the folds of the hills, its houses huddled together as though sharing warmth. Among them, one light shines brighter, spilling outward in a way that is not just illumination but invitation. It is the glow of a pub, a beacon in the drizzle, a lantern promising company, laughter and fire. The rain thickens as you reach the edge of the village, droplets slanting against the windshield, bouncing from stone pavements. The wipers sweep with their steady rhythm, but even they cannot clear all the water at once, and for a few moments the pub appears only in fragments. A sign swinging gently above the door, a thatched roof darkened by rain, windows glowing like golden squares in a damp painting. You ease the van to a stop and cut the engine. The hum falls away, replaced by the patter of rain against the roof, the distant murmur of voices, and the faint strains of music drifting through the night. When you step outside, the air is cool and heavy with damp, wrapping around you like a cloak. Your boots meet the cobbled street with a soft splash, and in that moment you realise how quiet the village would be without the pub. The houses are dark, their windows shuttered, but the pub glows with life, a single flame burning in the mist. You cross the short distance, rain running down your coat, your footsteps echoing faintly against stone. As you push the door open, warmth greets you at once. Not just physical, but human. Inside, the air is alive with scents. Peat smoke from the fireplace, hops and barley from freshly poured pints, the faint sweetness of cider, the salt of damp coats drying near the door. The glow from lamps and firelight softens every corner, turning wood and stone into something that feels like home. People sit in clusters around small tables, their voices mingling in low conversation, laughter rising now and then like sparks from the fire. You take a step further in, and the door closes behind you, shutting out the rain, leaving you wrapped in the pub's golden cocoon. Music floats through the air, not from a stage but from a circle near the fire. A fiddle sings first, high and plaintive, joined by the steady rhythm of a bodhran drum, then by the lilting notes of a flute. The musicians are not performers but neighbours, faces lined with weather, hands moving with practised ease. They play for the sheer joy of it, weaving tunes older than memory, tunes that feel as natural to this place as the rain outside. The melody curls through the room, slipping into every conversation, every sip of drink, every quiet thought. You choose a spot near the fire, a wooden bench worn smooth by years of visitors. The heat radiates toward you, drying the damp on your coat, loosening the chill from your fingers. A server approaches with a smile that feels both polite and familiar, as though you are not a stranger, but simply a guest who has not visited in a while. You order something warm, perhaps a mug of tea or a small glass of whiskey, and when it arrives, the cup itself is comfort. The steam curling upward, the scent filling your senses, the first sip spreading warmth through your chest. You lean back and let your gaze wander. At a table nearby, two men laugh over a story, their voices rising and falling in rhythm with the fiddle's tune. At another, a woman in a wool sweater bends close to a child, whispering words that bring a smile to the young face. Near the fire, the musicians lean into their instruments, eyes half closed, bodies swaying with the rhythm, and all around, coats hang dripping, boots sit muddy, cheeks glow red from weather. The rain has not been kept outside. It lingers on clothing, on faces, but here it has been transformed into story, into conversation, into warmth. Your own boots squeak faintly as you shift on the floor, and for a moment the sound is louder than the music. You smile inwardly at the thought, amused by how even the smallest noise can claim its place in such a setting. Perhaps others notice, perhaps not, but in this room no sound feels unwelcome. It is all part of the gathering, part of the living texture that makes a pub more than four walls and a fire. The Irish have a saying that no one is a stranger here, only a friend you have not met yet. Tonight that feels true, even if you speak to no one, even if you simply sit by the fire with your drink, you are included. The warmth does not need words. It moves through shared silence as easily as through conversation. Every nod, every smile, every note of music is enough to weave you into the room. As you sip again, you imagine the rain still falling outside, cobbles slick and shining, mist curling around rooftops. The pub stands against it not by resisting, but by glowing brighter. Outside, the world may be damp and grey, but inside, gold spills into every corner, and laughter rises like embers. You realise that this is what makes such places precious. Not their walls, not their drinks, not even their music, but the way they gather warmth in the middle of rain, the way they remind you that company exists, that comfort can be shared. Time passes unnoticed. The music swells, the fire crackles, your drink empties slowly, and the pub continues its gentle hum. When at last you rise to leave, pulling your coat around you, you feel the weight of warmth lingering even as you step back into drizzle. The rain greets you like an old companion. The mist folds around the road. The van waits with its lantern glow. But inside you, the fire still burns, the music still echoes, the laughter still rests. And as the engine hums once more, carrying you out of the village, you realise that the pub's lantern has done its work. It has given you not just shelter from rain, but a reminder of connection, a moment of shared humanity to carry into the misty road ahead. The road leaves the glow of the pub behind, and once more the world returns to mist and drizzle. Yet it feels different now. The firelight and music you carried out with you linger like an ember in your chest, warming you as the van hums forward. The rain resumes its rhythm, steady and familiar, tapping against the roof with the patience of someone who knows they have all night. Your headlights slide over stone walls, hedges and puddles, but your mind drifts elsewhere, into thoughts of the people who have always moved through this landscape. You picture the shepherd from earlier, his steady steps, his dog circling the flock. Then you think of another figure, one you have not seen but can easily imagine. The postman on his bicycle, pedalling slowly along these same wet roads, letters tucked in his satchel, rain dripping from the brim of his cap. Perhaps he's not out tonight, but the idea of him feels as real as the sound of rain on your roof. In Ireland's small villages, the postman was never only a messenger. He was a thread connecting one household to another, a bearer not just of news but of presence. Imagine him pedalling through the drizzle, his tyres cutting through puddles with a soft hiss, his boots spattered with mud, his breath visible in the cool air. The bicycle is sturdy, its frame plain, built less for speed than for endurance. The letters in his bag are already damp around the edges, though carefully protected by waxed canvas. He does not rush. Each house, each cottage, each farm will receive its delivery in turn, whether at dawn, midday or late afternoon. Time here is not measured by timetables, but by patience. The post arrives when it arrives, and the villagers trust that it will always find its way. There is something comforting about this slowness. Letters once moved like raindrops, falling steadily, unhurried, each carrying its own story, each eventually reaching the ground. They were not instantaneous like messages today, but in their delay lay their meaning. To write a letter was to shape thought carefully, to commit words to paper, to imagine the reader's face when the envelope was opened days or weeks later. To receive a letter was to feel connection stretched across time and distance, folded into an envelope, delivered by the steady pedalling of a postman who knew every corner of the valley. You imagine him approaching a cottage on a night like this, his bicycle squeaking as he brakes, his boots squelching in mud as he leans the bike against a wall. Perhaps the door opens before he knocks, because the family inside already knows the rhythm of his rounds. Perhaps a child runs forward to take the letter, eyes wide at the sight of handwriting on the envelope. Perhaps the postman lingers for a moment, exchanging a word or two, his voice carrying the same warmth as the fire inside. Then he tips his cap, mounts his bicycle again and disappears into the mist, leaving behind not just a letter, but a moment of connection. There is gentle humour in imagining his obstacles too. Sheep wander freely along these roads, unbothered by human schedules. You picture them standing stubbornly in his path, staring at him with calm indifference as though guarding the way. He rings his small bell, the sound bright and cheerful, but the sheep do not move until they are ready. He pedals slowly around them, shaking his head but smiling all the same. They are unpaid traffic wardens, keeping order on their own terms, and the postman has learned to respect their authority. The thought makes you smile as you drive, the image of a man negotiating with sheep in the drizzle, his letters waiting patiently in their satchel. You realise that such moments of humour are not distractions from life, but part of its rhythm. Rain may fall, mist may thicken, time may stretch slowly, but laughter always finds a place, even if it begins with something as simple as a bicycle halted by a flock. As the van rolls forward, you sense the echo of generations. Long before cars and vans, before even bicycles, there were messengers who walked these roads, carrying news by foot, pausing at doorways to deliver words from afar. Their pace was slow, but the trust was the same. Words would always find their way. Tonight, though the world has changed, you carry that same reassurance. The hum of the engine, the glow of the lantern, the rhythm of the rain. All of it feels like a modern echo of the same promise. Connection will always travel, no matter how slow. The mist thickens and the imagined postman fades back into it, as though he were never entirely real but rather a figure conjured by the night. Yet you keep him with you, a quiet companion pedalling just beyond sight, steady and reliable. His presence adds another layer to the road you travel. You're not only moving through landscapes of bog and lake and mountain, you're also moving through lives, through stories, through the quiet endurance of people who found ways to keep one another connected. Inside the van, you adjust the blanket and sip again from your cup. The tea is gone now, only faint warmth lingering, but the gesture itself feels enough. The postman would have understood that too, that the act of carrying matters as much as the contents. A letter may contain sorrow or joy, news of birth or of loss, but the act of its arrival was always reassurance. Someone thought of you, someone reached across distance, someone sent a part of themselves folded in paper. The rain continues, steady and persistent, its rhythm echoing the imagined rhythm of bicycle wheels turning. Both sounds are part of the same music, a slow and patient melody that stretches through the valley. You breathe in, letting it fill you, letting the night's imagery settle deep within. Sheep and shepherds, pubs and fiddles, postmen and bicycles, they are not separate fragments but part of one tapestry, stitched together by mist and memory, by rain and resilience. And as the van carries you further down the road, you realise that the presence of people, whether real or imagined, has transformed the journey. The land is no longer empty. It is filled with faces, gestures, voices and laughter, all moving with you in the quiet night. The postman may have vanished into fog, but his story remains, pedalling beside you, reminding you that even in the loneliest stretches, connection always finds its way. The road winds upward again, the mist folding close around you, until the headlights catch something unusual on a rise to the left. At first it looks like nothing more than an irregular mound, a circle of earth blurred by rain and fog. Yet as you draw closer, you see the outline more clearly. A ring, not perfectly smooth but distinct, a shape too deliberate to be natural, too ancient to be recent. You're looking at what locals call a fairy fort, an earthen ring left from long ago, often the remains of a circular dwelling or fortification, but in Irish tradition, something more than ruins. These are places woven into story, places people approach with caution and respect, places where the everyday world and the other world are said to meet. The mist drifts across the mound, curling over its edges like smoke rising from hidden fires. Grass covers it thickly, glistening under the drizzle, and here and there stones protrude, weathered and moss-covered. A circle of hawthorn trees stands along one edge, their branches twisted, as though shaped by the wind and something older still. The headlights catch them for a moment before the fog swallows them again, leaving only their silhouettes stark and skeletal against the night. Folklore says that fairy forts are the homes of the Aios Sea, the fairy folk, guardians of the land, unpredictable and powerful. To disturb a fort is to invite misfortune. To cut its trees or move its stones is to bring illness or loss. Even today, farmers will steer ploughs around them. Roads are sometimes rerouted to avoid them, and old stories are retold of those who dared to interfere and pay dearly for it. It is not fear so much as respect, a recognition that some places belong not to us but to mystery, and that mystery is best left undisturbed. As you gaze through the mist, it is easy to imagine why. The circle seems to hold a presence, a weight that is not threatening but undeniable. You picture tiny lights flickering in the fog, not lanterns, not candles, but something softer, glows that drift like fireflies, gathering among the hawthorns, hovering above the ring, vanishing when you try to focus on them. Perhaps they are tricks of the eyes, reflections in the mist, but the thought lingers that they could be more. Legends tell of travellers glimpsing such lights, of hearing faint music carried on windless nights, of voices calling their names though no one was there. Changelings, too, are bound to these tales. Old stories speak of children taken from cradles, replaced with fairy doubles, leaving families bewildered and grief-stricken. The changeling look the same, yet never quite right. Restless, uncanny, fragile. To prevent such mischief, mothers were said to keep iron near cribs, for fairies could not abide the touch of metal, or to leave offerings of milk at the edges of fairy forts, hoping to appease those who lived within. In the glow of your headlights, with mist swirling and hawthorns looming, the stories feel less like superstition and more like the land's way of explaining its own mysteries. You slow the van, letting it idle, and imagine stepping outside. The rain would cling to your coat, the ground would squelch beneath your boots, and the silence would grow deeper as you approached the ring. You would feel watched, not with suspicion, but with curiosity, as though the place itself were measuring your presence. You might pause at the edge, reluctant to cross, knowing instinctively that some threshold's not meant to be stepped over. You might listen, straining your ears for music that is not quite there, for voices that seem just out of reach. You might even glimpse a light drifting among the hawthorns, vanishing the moment you blink. Back in the van, the lantern glows steadily, a reminder of your safety, of the thin but steady line between imagination and dream. Yet even here, behind glass, you feel the atmosphere shift. The fairy fort holds its own silence, different from the bog's muffled quiet, or the lake's reflective calm. It is a silence that feels inhabited, as though the pause itself has company. You realise that folklore does not grow from nothing. It grows from nights like this, from shapes glimpsed in mist, from feelings that stir when the land whispers without words. You breathe deeply, and the scent of wet grass and rain fills the air. The mist thickens around the fort, softening its outlines, until it becomes less a mound of earth and more a suggestion, a memory carved into the landscape. You let the van roll forward again, headlights sweeping past the hawthorns, and soon the fort fades behind you. Yet its presence lingers, a reminder that some places are best left unmeasured, their meanings held in story rather than science. As the road curves onward, you reflect on the way folklore and landscape intertwine here. A ring of earth is not just soil and stone, it is a portal to imagination, a gathering point for stories that endure precisely because they cannot be proven. The fairy fort behind you may hold nothing but grass and moss, or it may hold something older, something unseen, something that flickers at the edge of vision. Tonight, you do not need to decide. It is enough to have passed, to have glimpsed, to have felt the quiet weight of a place where the boundary between worlds feels thinner than mist. The van hums steadily, the rain resumes its song, and the mist folds around the road once more. But in your thoughts, small lights still flicker, voices still linger, hawthorns still guard their circle. You carry them with you into the night, companions not of flesh and blood, but of story, reminding you that Ireland's roads are never travelled alone. The road bends westward, and soon you sense the sea before you hear it. The mist grows heavier, thicker, filled with salt, and the air itself feels different, sharper, bracing, as though it has travelled unbroken across thousands of miles of Atlantic waves to reach this narrow stretch of land. The van hums steadily, carrying you over low hills, until the sound arrives. A distant roar, deep and endless, the voice of the ocean pressing against cliffs unseen. You open the window slightly, and the air sweeps in, cool and raw, carrying with it not just salt but something older, something that feels like memory. Ireland's coast is lined with stories, and none cling more tightly to the sea than the tales of selkies. They are said to be seal people, creatures who live in the water but, under certain moons, shed their skins and walk as humans on shore. Some stories speak of selkies captured by fishermen, their sealskins hidden away, forcing them to live as wives or husbands until they one day find what was stolen and slip back into the waves. Others tell of love freely chosen, brief but intense, between land and sea, love that always ends in return to water, for no matter how strong the bond, the sea will always call its children home. As the van rolls closer to the coast, you imagine these tales carried in the rhythm of the waves themselves. Each crash against the rocks is a word, each pause a breath, each surge a line in a song that has no beginning and no end. You picture the dark shapes of seals bobbing offshore, their eyes glistening in lantern light, watching with curiosity from just beyond the foam. It is easy to see why people imagined them as more than animals. Their gaze is not blank. It seems to hold questions, secrets, perhaps even longing. In the misty twilight, the line between seal and selkie feels as thin as the mist itself. You park the van near the cliff's edge, careful, listening as the sea roars below, though you cannot see it clearly through fog. The sound fills the air, filling even the silence inside the van, until it seems to vibrate in your chest. You sip from your cup, letting the warmth counter the chill that slips in from the cracked window. The contrast is striking. The cold breath of the ocean outside, relentless and raw, against the cosy glow of the lantern and the blanket draped across your lap. It mirrors the selkie story itself. Sea and land, wildness and hearth. The pull of two worlds at once. For a moment you close your eyes, and the tale unfolds as though whispered by the waves. You see a seal pulling itself onto a rocky shore, shaking water from its fur, then shedding its skin to reveal a figure, human and radiant, standing bare against the night. You imagine the footsteps across damp sand, the encounter with a fisherman carrying lantern light, the exchange of glances that hold both fear and wonder. You see the seal skin taken, hidden in a cottage, and the figure living as human, raising children, tending hearths, yet always with eyes that look out to sea. Then, one day, The skin is found, retrieved, embraced, and the selkie returns to the waves, leaving behind both love and longing. The story has many versions, some tender, some sorrowful, some cruel. Yet beneath them all lies the same truth. The sea gives, and the sea takes, and those who belong to it will always return. It is not tragedy so much as inevitability, the kind of truth that feels older than language. Listening to the waves crash below, you feel that inevitability as clearly as the rain on your roof. The mist swirls across the windshield, thickening and thinning, revealing flashes of cliff edge, tufts of grass bent by wind, droplets beading on the glass. You imagine lanterns on the horizon, faint lights that could be fishing boats, or perhaps the glow of selkies dancing at the water's edge. Old tales said that on nights like this, travellers sometimes saw gatherings on the shore, figures singing and swaying, vanishing the moment they were approached. Tonight, in the half-light of fog and sea, the thought does not feel impossible. Inside the van, the heater hums softly, and the air warms again. You draw the blanket closer, grateful for its weight, for the comfort of its fabric against the raw breath of the ocean. The contrast is profound, and it deepens your appreciation for both. Without the cold sea, the warmth inside would mean less. Without the warmth inside, the sea would feel overwhelming. Together they create balance, reminding you that stories of selkies exist because people understood that balance, the tension between longing for safety on land and longing for the freedom of waves. You take another sip, and the steam curls upward, small and fragile against the vastness outside. It feels like holding a hearth in your hands, like carrying a piece of human comfort into the roar of something immeasurable. The selkie too must have felt this. The hearth's glow, the child's laughter, the warmth of belonging, all precious, all fleeting, all balanced against the inevitability of return to sea. The waves crash again, louder now, as though to remind you of their presence. You lean back, eyes half closed, letting the rhythm wash over you. It is endless, tireless, both soothing and immense. You realise that the sea's voice is not just background, it is story itself, carrying myths in its roar, carrying memory in its salt. The selkie tale is not simply legend. It is the human way of listening to this voice, of giving shape to the longing and the pull that the ocean always inspires. When you open your eyes again, the mist still covers the cliffs, the waves still surge unseen, and the lantern still glows steadily. You ease the van back onto the road, the hum of the engine blending with the sea's roar. Behind you, the selkie story lingers, not as sorrow, not as fear, but as understanding. Some things belong to the sea, some to the land, and some hover between, reminding you that longing itself can be beautiful. The road carries you inland again, away from the salt-heavy air of the Atlantic. The mist does not vanish. It rarely does in this land, but it grows thinner, drifting in strands rather than curtains, enough that the landscape slowly emerges. What you see ahead is unlike anything you have encountered so far tonight. Gone are the green fields, the bog softness, the mirror lakes. Instead, the ground spreads wide in grey stone, fractured and lined, a surface that looks less like earth and more like the cracked skin of some ancient being. You've entered the Burren, a region of limestone that lies exposed to sky and rain, bare and strange, like a moonscape laid upon Ireland's western edge. The headlights sweep across the terrain, and the stone glistens where rain gathers in shallow pools. Deep fissures run in long lines, carving the land into slabs that seem too deliberate to be natural, as though they were cut by hands rather than by time. Between these cracks, plants push upward. Delicate flowers, tufts of grass, small ferns. Their colours appear all the brighter against the grey, purples, yellows, whites, each bloom fragile yet defiant. The Burren is known for this paradox, where rare alpine and Mediterranean plants grow side by side, finding a home in the most unlikely crevices. Science will tell you it is because the limestone holds warmth, because rainwater carries minerals, because microclimates form in sheltered cracks. But as you gaze at them tonight, the flowers seem like quiet miracles, embroidery stitched into a quilt of stone. You slow the van, letting the tyres crunch softly against gravel, and for a moment you imagine stepping out. The ground would feel uneven underfoot, hard but not smooth, every step a choice between slabs and cracks. Rain would collect in hollows, reflecting pieces of sky and mist, making the earth itself look like a broken mirror. Yet among the cracks, you would see life everywhere. Tiny blossoms leaning bravely toward the dim light, moss softening stone, even the tracks of animals that find their way through this harsh beauty. It is not a barren place, despite its name. It is a place that teaches endurance, where beauty appears not despite difficulty but because of it. Legends too cling to this stone. Some say the Burren was shaped by giants dragging their hands across the land, leaving grooves where their fingers pressed. Others say it is the back of a sleeping creature, the fissures its wrinkles, the flowers its breath made visible. Whatever the tale, you understand why people felt the need to explain it with story. The Burren does not resemble the gentle fields or the lush valleys of elsewhere. It demands a different kind of imagination, one that recognises harshness and beauty as companions rather than opposites. The rain eases again, leaving the stone glistening as though polished. You watch as the mist curls low, filling some of the cracks until they look like streams of silver running between slabs. The headlights catch flowers leaning bravely at the edges, their petals trembling slightly in the breeze. You reflect on how life always finds a way, even in places where it seems impossible. The Burren holds not lush abundance, but small, precise miracles, each one more striking because it is unexpected. You sip from your cup, though the tea is nearly gone, and the warmth mingles with the thought of flowers surviving among stone. The van hums softly, its interior glow reflecting faintly in the window. Outside, the Burren stretches into shadow, but even in the half-dark it feels vast, endless, ancient. You realise that landscapes like this do not ask for comfort, they ask for attention. They do not wrap you in green softness or golden firelight. They show you resilience, persistence, the quiet truth that even cracked stone can cradle life. The wind shifts, carrying a faint whistle as it slips between rocks. The sound is hollow, echoing, almost like a flute played from beneath the earth. You imagine that the land itself is making music, not loud, not insistent, but present. Perhaps those who lived here long ago heard the same notes and shaped them into stories. Perhaps the wind through stone was the first song, and the flowers blooming in cracks were its verses. Tonight, with mist drifting low and rain easing into drizzle, the music feels as though it is meant only for you, a lullaby carved from stone. Driving slowly onward, you notice how the slabs rise and fall, some flat and wide, others tilting upward like steps leading into fog. The road threads through them carefully, and the van follows without complaint, its hum blending with the whisper of wind and water. You're reminded of quilts, the way pieces of fabric are stitched together, each different, yet forming a whole. The Burren is a quilt of stone and bloom, of fissure and flower, stitched not by hands but by time itself, centuries layering into a pattern too vast to fully see. You breathe deeply, and the scent of wet limestone reaches you. Sharp, mineral, clean, as though the very bones of the earth have been washed by rain. It mixes with the faint sweetness of flowers, a contrast as subtle as it is profound. Inside the van you feel the contrast mirrored, the hard stone outside, the soft blanket across your lap, the cold night pressing close, the steady warmth of the lantern. It is this interplay that makes the night memorable, the balance between starkness and comfort, silence and sound, fragility and endurance. The burren passes slowly, its slabs stretching into the dark, until the mist folds around them once more, blurring edges, softening details, leaving only the impression of stone and bloom, crack and colour. You carry that impression with you as the van hums forward. It lingers like a quiet lesson. Beauty does not always bloom in abundance. Sometimes it waits in cracks, patient and precise, content to flourish when no one expects it. The burren's fractured stones fade behind you, and the road begins to climb once more. The mist grows denser as you ascend, curling in long ribbons that cling to the glass, and though the sea is not yet visible, you can feel its presence. The air sharpens, filled again with salt, and each gust of wind rattles faintly against the van, as though the world is preparing you for something vast. Then, as the van crests another rise, the sound arrives, not faint, not distant, but immediate, immense, and unbroken. The roar of waves strikes against stone far below, filling the air with a voice too large to ignore. You're approaching the cliffs of Moher, though the mist insists on hiding them from sight. The headlights cut narrow tunnels through fog, revealing only small fragments of what lies ahead. A fence line, slick, with rain. A tuft of grass bending flat under wind. A single stone outcrop, wet and dark, jutting from the earth like a knuckle of some buried hand. Beyond these fragments, there is only grey, a grey that suggests space rather than wall, as though the world has opened but refused to show its depth. You know the cliffs fall hundreds of feet into the Atlantic, yet tonight the sea remains unseen, its presence, marked only by the constant thunder rising from below. You park the van at a small lay-by near the cliff's edge, cutting the engine so that the only sounds are wind and sea. The silence you carried from the burren vanishes, replaced by this oceanic chorus. Low rumbles, sharp crashes, long hisses as waves withdraw, then the sudden strike again. It is endless, tireless, layered with a rhythm that feels older than time. You sit in stillness, letting it wash through you, and realise that the cliffs are less landscape than threshold, the place where earth and sky meet, where solidity ends and immensity begins. The mist thickens, swirling across the headlights, erasing the horizon. It is as though you are suspended in a world without distance, where every direction is both near and far. Yet within the fog you sense scale. The cliff beneath your unseen feet is immense, holding steady against centuries of storms. The sea below, though hidden, is relentless, shaping the rock grain by grain, carrying fragments away into its endlessness. The two forces meet here, land enduring, sea insisting, and the result is awe, even when sight is denied. You take a sip from your cup, the warmth grounding against the vastness outside. Inside the van, the lantern glows steadily, its light small but steady, a hearth carried into a place where no hearth should exist. The contrast deepens your sense of safety. Outside, the world is wild, immense, unpredictable. Inside, it is contained, calm, protective. Yet both belong together, one reminding you of scale, the other reminding you of care. Without the wildness outside, the glow within would not matter. Without the glow within, the wildness outside would be overwhelming. You lean back and close your eyes, and in the darkness the cliffs emerge in imagination. You see their walls rising straight from sea, sheer and black, crowned with green grass and dotted with seabirds wheeling in circles. You hear their cries mingling with the waves, sharp and piercing, threads of life woven into the vast fabric of stone and water. You picture the edge itself, a narrow line where earth exhales, a slow breath released after centuries of holding. Standing at that line would be like standing at the edge of the known world, the place where land says, "Here I end. Here you must listen to what lies beyond." Legends have always grown from such places. Some speak of spirits that gather along the cliffs, voices carried in the wind, songs mistaken for bird cries. Others tell of lovers who leapt from the edge, their stories remembered in stone arches and caves carved below. Yet in truth, no tale is needed to explain the power felt here. The cliffs themselves are story, written in vertical lines of rock, in layers of shale and sandstone, in the endless dialogue between sea and land. Tonight, hidden by mist, they are no less powerful for being unseen. If anything, the concealment deepens their presence, asking you to feel rather than to look. You imagine opening the door and stepping out, boots meeting slick grass, wind tugging at your coat, the roar of waves rising so strongly that it seems to vibrate in your bones. You would see little through fog, only white swirling at the edge, but you would feel everything. The drop, the height, the scale. Perhaps you would step closer, cautious but compelled, until you stood at the fence, gazing into grey, hearing the unseen sea moving below. The thought alone is enough to quicken your breath, to remind you that awe is as much about what is hidden as what is revealed. Back inside the van, you let the sound surround you. The cliffs do not ask for interpretation. They simply are, immense, enduring, endlessly shaped, endlessly shaping. You realise that their voice is not so different from breathing. Each wave a slow inhale, each retreat a slow exhale, the entire ocean rising and falling like a chest that never tires. The metaphor rests easily in your mind. The cliffs as the earth's lungs, the sea as its breath, mist as the exhaled vapour drifting into the night. You sip again, the cup nearly empty now, and smile at the thought that here, at the edge of land and sky, you're safe in a moving cocoon of warmth. The cliffs remain vast, the sea remains relentless, but your place within them is gentle. A listener wrapped in a blanket, a traveller pausing at the threshold of immensity. The mist swirls again, and for a brief moment it thins. You catch a glimpse of darker shadow below, a suggestion of vertical drop, perhaps even the faint white spray of waves striking stone. It lasts only a second before fog folds back, erasing the view, but the impression lingers. Sometimes a glimpse is more powerful than a panorama. Sometimes to imagine is more profound than to see. The engine hums once more as you ease forward, the cliffs fading behind into mist, their roar still following like a heartbeat in the distance. You realise that even as you drive onward, the cliffs remain with you, not as a sight, but as a presence, vast and steady, reminding you that the world is larger than comfort, larger than story, larger even than imagination. And yet, somehow, knowing that makes your comfort deeper, your story richer, your imagination stronger. The cliffs fade behind you, their roar becoming a memory that hums faintly in the back of your mind, like a drumbeat that continues even when no longer heard. The road turns inland again, climbing gently, winding between low hills softened by mist. The rain lingers, steady but light, each drop tapping against the van with the patience of an old song. And then, through the fog, you see it. A village, small and quiet, its houses clustered close, their chimneys trailing faint wisps of smoke. The headlights catch whitewashed walls and dark roofs, the glow of a few windows shining like lanterns in the drizzle. This is a Gaeltacht village, one of the places where the Irish language is still spoken daily, not just as heritage, but as living voice. The air seems to carry it even before you hear it, as though the rhythm of Irish speech floats like music through the mist. You ease the van slowly through narrow streets, past cottages lined with stone walls, past doors painted in bright colours that shine even under grey skies. From one open window you catch the rise and fall of voices, low, musical, flowing with a cadence that feels different from English, softer and yet stronger, each word carrying weight like a pebble dropped into water. The language is not strange to you, even if you do not speak it. It feels familiar in another way, familiar because it belongs to the land. It is older than the road beneath you, older than the stone walls dividing fields, older even than some of the stories you've carried with you tonight. To hear it spoken is to hear continuity, the persistence of culture, like a melody that never stops, even when instruments change. You slow further near the small square where a shop stands, its window glowing, its sign painted in Irish script. A figure steps out, pulling a hood over their head, and calls back toward the door. The words drift across the drizzle, Irish, lyrical, rising and falling in a way that sounds almost sung. You cannot catch meaning, but you can catch rhythm, and rhythm is sometimes more important than meaning. It carries reassurance, familiarity, intimacy, the tone of a lullaby hummed before sleep. You imagine children here growing up with this language first, their earliest words not simply communication, but inheritance. They hear lullabies whispered in Irish, prayers spoken in Irish, laughter and admonitions, greetings and goodbyes, all in a tongue that ties them to ancestors stretching centuries back. The thought warms you, because language is not only sound, it is presence. To hear it alive is to know that memory is alive, that culture is not fragile but resilient. The rain thickens briefly, drumming against the van's roof, and you let the rhythm join with the voices drifting through open windows. The two merge easily, rain and speech, weather and word, nature and culture. You realise that they have always belonged together. The cadence of Irish has grown out of this land's rhythms, shaped by the same rain, the same mist, the same winds that tug at stone walls and rattle cottage doors. The sound belongs here in a way that no other sound could. You pause the van at the edge of the village, pulling to the side where the road narrows into fields. Through the mist you see faint lights in windows, golden and steady, each one like a hearth glowing against the grey. You sip from your cup, the warmth small but steady, and let your mind drift with the voices still echoing. Even though you cannot translate them, they carry you, rocking you gently like the van itself. There is a saying that to lose a language is to lose a way of seeing the world. Here, on this misty night, you feel the truth of it. Irish carries not just grammar and vocabulary, but images, rhythms, ways of describing rain, stone, fire, kinship, love, longing. Words that do not exist in English find a home here, shaping thought, shaping dream. The fact that these words still live, spoken casually in a village where chimneys smoke and windows glow, feels like a quiet triumph, a reminder that continuity does not always need to be loud to be strong. The mist folds closer, softening the outlines of cottages, making the village seem like a cluster of lanterns floating in a grey sea. The rain eases again, becoming a fine drizzle, and for a moment the air feels almost still. You imagine that the voices inside have quieted too, as families settle for the night, fires burning low, tea cooling in cups, children drifting into sleep to the sound of lullabies in Irish. The thought itself feels like a gift, as though you too have been included in that lullaby, carried on the same rhythm, soothed by the same persistence of sound. Inside the van the lantern glows, echoing the windows outside, making you part of the same pattern of light. You're not separate. You're one more traveller pausing in a land where words carry history, where sound itself is heritage. You lean back, letting the hum of the van, the patter of rain, and the imagined cadence of Irish speech blend into one melody. It is a melody without beginning or end, a song that belongs as much to mist and stone as to lips and ears. As you ease forward again, the village fades behind you, lights dimming into fog, voices receding into rain. Yet the impression remains, as though the language itself has been folded into the night you carry. It lingers like music after the last note has been played, continuing in silence, echoing in memory. And as the road unwinds once more into darkness, you realise that the journey is not only across landscapes, but across voices, across culture, across continuity. The cliffs roared, the fairy forts whispered, the selkies sang, and now the village has hummed its lullaby. Together, they weave a tapestry of presence, each sound holding you gently, each voice guiding you deeper into the quiet. The road winds gently upward once more, leaving the Gaeltacht village behind. Its voices fade into memory, soft echoes that linger like a lullaby after the child has already drifted into sleep. The mist remains, though lighter now, and you notice how it shifts in tone as evening deepens. The grey of afternoon gives way to something softer, a silvery dimness that seems to belong not to day or night, but to the moment between, that quiet hour when the world pauses before deciding which way to lean. You find a grassy verge just beyond a curve in the road and ease the van to a stop. The engine hum falls away, leaving only the gentle percussion of rain on the roof. For the first time tonight you let the road rest, content to sit still and allow the landscape to unfold without the frame of headlights. Outside, the drizzle softens and the mist parts just enough for you to glimpse the valley stretching below. It is not a clear view. Edges blur, outlines fade, but you can see enough to feel its depth. The dark folds of hills, the pale thread of a river winding between them, the faint patchwork of fields stitched together by walls. Above it all, the sky is beginning to shift. Clouds drift apart in slow motion, their edges tinged with faint silver where the hidden moon begins to rise. The light is not bright but gentle, a soft glow that turns the mist itself into a lantern, glowing from within. The rain catches it in drops, each bead glistening before sliding down glass, leaving trails like strokes of watercolour. You sit in silence, watching, and realise how little the land needs to impress. There is no drama here, no storm or spectacle, only the quiet insistence of beauty that reveals itself slowly, like a secret whispered without urgency. Inside the van, the lantern glows warmly, its light spilling across wood and blanket, mingling with the moonlight that filters faintly through mist. The two lights meet and blend, gold and silver, hearth and sky, human and natural. You sip again from your cup, tea or water, it hardly matters now, and the steam rises like a smaller echo of mist, curling briefly before vanishing into the air. It feels as though everything tonight belongs to the same rhythm: steam, mist, moon, rain, all drifting, all fading, all reappearing. The rain softens further, becoming not drops but threads, so fine they hardly register as sound. They add texture rather than volume, like the brush of fingertips across a drum. Against this, the steady beat of water dripping from the roof joins in, irregular but constant, a percussion the land has played since roofs were first built. You listen, and the sounds layer into a composition. The faint hiss of drizzle, the tap of drops, the whisper of wind against grass. It is music not written, but always performed, a piece that never begins and never ends, only shifts as each listener arrives. You lean back, blanket across your lap, and breathe in the air that drifts through a slightly open window. It smells of rain-washed grass, of soil dampened after a long day, of stone cooling beneath evening sky. It is a scent that carries both freshness and fatigue, like the land itself exhaling after carrying the weight of day. You realise that this is what evening is, not just the end of a light, but the earth itself taking a breath, slowing its pulse, readying for rest. The moon rises higher, though never fully clear, always softened by haze. It appears and disappears, sometimes a faint circle, sometimes nothing more than a glow behind cloud. Its presence is enough. It reminds you that even unseen it continues, steady and sure, marking time with patience. In its glow, the valley seems transformed. Fields that looked dark now shimmer faintly. Walls that were shadows become silver lines. The river a pale ribbon winding silently between them. You could imagine it as a quilt spread out across the land, stitched with thread of stone and thread of water, covered by a veil of mist. Inside the van, the lantern flickers slightly as a draught stirs, and you're reminded of all the light scattered across the valley, windows glowing in cottages, fires burning low, perhaps another traveller pausing somewhere nearby. Each light is small, yet together they are enough to hold the dark at bay. You feel yourself part of that constellation, one more flicker in the wide night, not alone but quietly connected. You take another sip, letting warmth linger in your chest, and your thoughts grow slower, quieter. The van is still, the road is still, the valley is still, and even the rain seems to have accepted its gentler pace. There is no demand here, no urgency, only presence. You realise that the day has moved you through greens and bogs, lakes and cliffs, stories of fairies and selkies, but now it asks for nothing more than rest. The land has offered its wonders, and now it simply offers stillness. You close your eyes briefly, and the sounds continue. Drizzle hissing softly, drops tapping against glass, the faint whistle of wind along stone. They weave into a lullaby, one not sung by voice but by valley, by rain, by mist. When you open your eyes again, the moon glows a little brighter, and you smile faintly at its persistence. The valley may fade in and out of view, but the rhythm of rest is steady. Steady as your breath, steady as the hum of the van waiting patiently beside you. And so you let the evening settle, not as an ending, but as a pause, a moment of balance before night deepens further. The valley lies beneath, the moon above, the mists between, and you, carried quietly at the centre, wrapped in light, sound, and silence. The valley lies hushed beyond the mist, and the van rests quietly on the grassy verge, its lantern casting a steady glow. You shift slightly in your seat, blanket pulled closer, and realise that the night has reached a point where movement no longer feels necessary. The road stretches ahead, but for now the road can wait. What the evening asks for is not more travel, but a pause, a small ritual, a gesture of comfort that belongs not to landscape or legend, but to the gentle hearth carried with you inside this moving home. And so you reach for the small kettle, filling it with water, setting it on to boil, letting the soft hiss of heat add its own thread to the music of rain and wind. The water begins slowly, barely a murmur at first, then a faint bubbling, then the familiar rising note of steam. It is a sound that has accompanied humans for centuries, in cottages and castles, in camps and caravans, a sound as constant as rain itself. Tonight it fills the van with promise, the promise of tea, of warmth held in a cup, of steam curling upward like a hearth fire in miniature. You prepare the leaves, perhaps chamomile, soft and floral, or perhaps Irish black tea, stronger, darker, carrying the depth of soil and rain. Either way, the ritual is the same, waiting, listening, allowing heat and water and time to do their quiet work. When the kettle sings, the sound feels almost like a fiddle's high note, sharp and fleeting, calling you to attention. You pour slowly, watching the liquid swirl into the cup, darkening as it mixes, releasing fragrance into the small space. The scent fills the van at once, grassy sweetness if chamomile, malty richness if black tea, both softened by steam. It is a scent that belongs to evening, a signal that the day is done, that rest is near. You lift the cup, its warmth sinking into your hands before you even sip. Holding it feels like holding a hearth, a small fire contained in porcelain, steady and forgiving. When you finally taste, the warmth spreads slowly through your chest, loosening what remains of the day's weight, steadying your breath, grounding you further into stillness. The rain outside continues, but its voice feels different now. It is no longer an element pressing against glass. It is accompaniment, percussion to the melody of tea and quiet. For a moment you imagine you're not alone. From somewhere deep in the valley, softened by mist and distance, you think you hear the faintest notes of a fiddle. The sound is so slight it may be only memory or imagination, but it lingers long enough to weave itself into your senses. Perhaps it drifts from a cottage hidden among the hills, where a fire still burns and someone lingers with bow and strings, playing not for audience but for the night itself. Perhaps it is only the wind shaping itself into music as it slides through stone walls and chimney flues. Either way, it joins your tea, your rain, your lantern, turning the moment into something fuller, something shared. The tune is slow, plaintive, carrying the melancholy sweetness that so many Irish airs hold. It rises gently, then falls, like breath, like waves against cliffs, like footsteps fading into fog. You close your eyes and let it move through you. It does not demand attention. It does not insist. It simply exists, drifting through air and memory, reminding you that even in solitude, company can arrive. Music does not need walls to carry it. It only needs someone willing to listen. The steam curls upward from your cup, and you watch it twist and vanish, rising into the glow of the lantern before disappearing into the dim. It looks like a story told and forgotten, or a dream half remembered. You think of all the evenings when tea was brewed in cottages across this land, centuries of hands lifting cups, centuries of steam rising into rafters. You are part of that same rhythm tonight, though your hearth is a campervan and your roof is of metal rather than thatch. Continuity does not care for form, it cares only for presence. The same ritual persists, water heated, leaves steeped, warmth shared. The fiddle fades again, or perhaps it was never there, yet you carry its echo within you. You think of pubs you have passed, of lantern-lit gatherings, of laughter mixing with tunes, and realise that even imagined music has the power to comfort. It is less about sound itself, and more about what sound carries. Memory, connection, the assurance that life hums beyond sight. Tonight the hum is faint, but it is enough. You sip again, slower this time, letting the flavour rest on your tongue, letting the warmth soak into your chest. The cup feels heavier now, as though holding not just liquid but calm itself. You set it down gently, listening as rain softens once more to drizzle. The mist curls against the glass, the lantern glows steadily, and your body grows heavier, sinking deeper into the stillness of evening. You glance out once more at the valley. It is blurred, softened, a little more than shadow and silver glow, yet it feels vast, filled with presence. Lights flicker faintly in the distance, perhaps from cottages, perhaps from farms, each one a hearth, each one a life preparing for sleep. You are one among many, connected not by words but by rhythm. Tea brewed, fires dimmed, rain falling, night settling. Inside the van you breathe slowly, matching the cadence of rain, of imagined fiddle, of the earth itself easing into rest. The cup is empty now, but its warmth remains, lingering like music long after the bow has left the string. You lean back, blanket pulled closer, lantern glowing, rain whispering, and realise that this is the heart of evening, not the places seen or the stories told, but the simple act of being still, of letting tea and old tunes guide you into quiet. The rain has eased almost to nothing now, a fine mist lingering in the air like breath that refuses to leave, and as you sit quietly in the van, You notice how the soundscape shifts. The roof, which for hours has been a drum of steady rhythms, falls nearly silent. The wipers rest, no longer needed, and the hum of the engine has long since stilled. In the hush that follows, a new presence reveals itself. You glance upward through the windshield, past the faint glow of the lantern, and see that the sky, after so much cloud and drizzle, has begun to open. It happens slowly, as though the night itself is reluctant to reveal its treasures. First, a single star pierces the mist, faint and trembling, as if uncertain of its welcome. Then another joins it, brighter, steadier, and then more, until the sky is no longer grey, but a dark velvet sprinkled with distant fires. The mist drifts like gauze across them, sometimes hiding, sometimes revealing, yet the impression is clear. Above the valley, above the van, above the wandering road, a vast blanket of stars has been spread. You lean back, eyes lifted, and let them settle into you. After hours of fog and rain, the sight feels almost unreal, a reminder that clarity often waits behind obscurity. Each star is small, yet together they create something immense, a field of light stretching beyond measure. It is not loud, not insistent, but steady, patient, enduring. You realise that in this quiet moment, you are part of the same blanket, another small light glowing in the lantern of the van, stitched into the same quilt of night. Folklore tells us that stars are windows, openings through which ancestors watch, their gaze soft and kind, keeping company with the living. You imagine that now, in this valley, the stars above are indeed windows, faces peering through, not with judgment, not with urgency, but with a quiet presence that says, "We are here, you're not alone, we've always been watching." It is a comforting thought, not heavy, not solemn, but tender, like the warmth of a hand laid gently on your shoulder. The sheep you passed earlier, damp and unbothered, come back to mind, and you smile at the thought that perhaps it is not the stars watching over you, but the sheep themselves, counting you the way we often count them. It is a small humour, a gentle inversion of the old idea. Perhaps you are the one being counted into sleep, each breath another tally, each blink another step toward rest. The image makes you smile inwardly, not a laugh, but the kind of smile that softens the body further, easing tension, reminding you that even the path into sleep can be playful. You take another slow sip from your cup, though it holds little more than warmth now, and let your eyes drift between lantern and sky. The lantern glows golden, near and fragile, while the stars blaze silver, far and steady. Yet both belong to the same night, one echoing the other, one small hearth and one vast constellation, each offering its own kind of comfort. The contrast is not competition but harmony, the reminder that scale does not matter when it comes to light. A single candle, a single star, both can hold the darkness at bay. The valley below lies hushed, its fields blurred, its river hidden, its cottages dim. Yet above, the stars glimmer without pause. You imagine how many others, across centuries, paused on nights like this to gaze upward. Shepherds leaning on staffs, fishermen returning from sea, children sneaking outside before bed. The same blanket spread above them, the same windows of ancestors watching, the same comfort drawn from distant fires. To look at stars is to share not just with the present, but with every gaze that has ever lifted to the sky. Tonight, you're joined with all of them, part of a chain unbroken by time. Your breath slows as you watch. Inhale with the mist, exhale with the stars, inhale again with the valley, exhale again with the river you cannot see but know is there. The rhythm carries you deeper into stillness, deeper into rest. The stars do not hurry, they simply exist, and in their existence they invite you to do the same. No striving, No rushing, only being. You close your eyes for a moment, and the stars remain behind your lids, points of light that linger even without vision. When you open them again, the sky seems fuller, more crowded with fire, as though the act of noticing has called them forth. You imagine the stars not as distant suns, but as lanterns hung carefully above, stitched into the sky by unseen hands, each one a reminder that the night is never empty. The mist shifts once more, hiding some, revealing others, and you accept the change without disappointment. You know now that even hidden, they remain. Presence does not require sight. The same is true for memory, for love, for comfort. What matters is knowing, not seeing. And tonight, you know that the blanket of stars is there, vast and steady, draped across the valley, tucked around you like a quilt meant to guide you gently into sleep. Inside the van, the lantern flickers faintly, its flames small but resilient, echoing the stars above. You pull the blanket closer, feel its weight settle across you, and let your body soften further into the seat. The rain has paused. The world is quiet. The stars have claimed the sky, and you, wrapped in their presence, feel yourself carried closer to rest. The stars remain faintly visible through the mist, glimmering in scattered clusters like lanterns stitched into the fabric of the night. You let their presence linger a little longer, then turn your attention inward to the small cocoon of light and warmth that is your van. The road has carried you far enough for one evening, and now the time has come not for more wandering, but for settling, for creating a nest where rest can fold around you as gently as the mist folds across the valley outside. You reach for the blanket draped over your lap and spread it across the bed you have prepared at the back of the van. The fabric is soft, heavy enough to hold warmth, light enough to breathe with you. You smooth it out slowly, enjoying the small ritual of tucking corners, arranging folds, shaping the space so that it feels inviting. A pillow waits there, its surface cool at first touch, then quick to absorb the warmth of your hand. As you adjust it into place, you realize how much of rest begins with gestures like this, not in the act of sleep itself, but in the quiet preparation, the careful making of a place where the body can finally surrender. The lantern glows steadily, its golden light spilling over the wood panels, softening edges, turning the interior into something that feels less like vehicle and more like cottage. The rain has all but ceased outside, leaving only the occasional drip from branches above, the sound faint and irregular, like a heartbeat slowing after exertion. The silence that follows is not empty but textured, filled with the softness of mist, the steadiness of stars, the hum of the land easing into night. You arrange yourself on the bed, pulling the blanket higher, feeling its weight settle across your chest and shoulders. The pillow cradles your head, and you close your eyes briefly to test the comfort. For a moment, it feels as though you are floating, not on fabric, but on something larger, a lake of quiet stretching in every direction. The van itself becomes a boat, its walls the hull, its roof the deck, its lantern the single mast carrying light. Outside, the mist is the water, endless and gentle, and you're carried across it without effort. The image lingers. You, adrift on a lake of night, guided not by oars but by stillness. Your breathing falls into rhythm with this image. Inhale as though the mist fills the boat's sails. Exhale as though the boat glides forward. Each breath is a movement, each pause a moment of rest, and soon you realize that you have entered a kind of tide, carried not by current or wind, but by your own lungs. It is a tide that pulls you deeper into calm, deeper into the waiting embrace of the night. You open your eyes briefly, then the lantern's glow meets you, steady and warm. Its light reminds you that even as you drift, you remain safe, wrapped in a vessel that carries both comfort and memory. You think of the shepherd's wave, the pub's firelight, the postman's bicycle, the fairy fort's silence, the selkie's longing, the burren's stones, the cliff's roar, the village's voices, the valley's mist, the stars above. Each moment has stitched itself into the blanket now covering you, as though your day's journey has been gathered into fabric, woven into comfort, waiting to hold you through the night. The pillow grows warmer beneath your head, and you let your body sink further into it, as though sinking not into fabric but into the boglands you passed earlier. Soft, deep, absorbing sound, holding weight gently without resistance. It is not a sinking that frightens, but one that reassures, the sense that you are being received by something patient, something willing to cradle you for as long as you need. You exhale, and the feeling deepens, the pillow becoming earth, the blanket becoming sky, the van becoming a nest where land and night meet. You reach to dim the lantern slightly, and the glow softens, fading toward amber, toward ember, toward the last light of a hearth at evening's close. Shadows lengthen across the wood, and the van becomes darker, quieter, more intimate. Beyond the glass, the stars remain faint, but they no longer ask for your gaze. They simply continue, their persistence reassuring, their distance irrelevant. You're not required to look outward anymore. Everything you need is here, inside, in the slow rhythm of your breath, in the warmth of the blanket, in the softness of the pillow. The van creaks faintly as it settles on its wheels, a sound like an old house easing into sleep. You smile at the thought, because in this moment the van is no longer merely a vehicle but a shelter, a home carried with you. Outside, the valley may stretch vast, the mist may drift endlessly, but inside you are contained, safe and still. Your breath grows slower, deeper, each inhale carrying mist, each exhale carrying release. The rhythm feels older than thought, older than story, as though it belonged to the land itself. You realise that rest is not an interruption of the journey, but part of it, that to sleep is simply another way of travelling, inward instead of outward, through dream instead of through mist. And so you let your body soften, your eyes grow heavy, your mind drift like the boat of your van across the lake of night. You are nested now, not only in fabric and wood, but in rhythm and memory, in the vast embrace of Ireland itself, a land that hums lullabies in rain and whispers stories in mist. The van has become still, its lantern dimmed, its walls breathing with you in the quiet rhythm of rest. Outside, the valley lies in its own hush, mist folding low across fields, stars lingering faintly above. You feel not only your own slowing breath, but the slowing of the land itself, as though Ireland too has grown weary of rain and wind and is ready to surrender to sleep. It is a thought that comes softly without insistence, that the earth does not simply exist around you, but rests with you, that its silence tonight is not emptiness but slumber. You listen carefully and the sounds confirm it. The river that earlier sang beside the road now seems quieter, its rush softened, its voice more like a murmur than a song. The wind, which tugged and whistled at cliffs, now drifts lazily through hedges, carrying no urgency, only sighs. Even the rain, companion of the entire evening, has ceased, leaving only the occasional drip from trees, slow and irregular, like the final notes of a song fading into silence. Everything has settled into the same rhythm: river, wind, mist, stars, and you. You imagine Ireland itself closing its eyes, the hills heavy with green folding themselves into shadow, the bogs once absorbing the day's footsteps, now lying untouched, their surfaces still, the lakes, mirrors of mist and cloud smoothing into darker glass, their depths sinking into silence, the cliffs, guardians of the coast, drawing a long exhale as waves soften against their feet. It is as if the entire island has pulled a blanket across itself, not of wool or cloth, but of mist and darkness stitched with stars. Inside the van, your body sinks deeper into the bed you've prepared. The pillow cradles your head, the blanket holds your shoulders, and the last of the tea's warmth lingers in your chest. You realise that every moment of the day has prepared you for this. The rhythm of rain teaching your breath to slow, the silence of lakes teaching your mind to still, the warmth of fire teaching your body to soften. The stories of land and sea reminding you that rest is not absence, but presence in its gentlest form. You close your eyes and imagine the fairy fort glowing faintly in mist, lights flickering like fireflies. You see the Selkie slipping back into waves, her story complete. You see the Burren stones holding tiny flowers even through night, the cliffs breathing with the sea, the village voices humming lullabies in Irish. Each memory becomes part of a larger lullaby, each image a thread in a tapestry designed not for display but for comfort. The land itself has been guiding you here step by step, story by story, until now, when sleep is no longer distant but waiting patiently beside you. Your breath deepens further, and the van rocks faintly in the breeze, like a cradle set upon the earth. You imagine Ireland as a great sleeping figure, its valleys arms folded, its rivers slow pulses, its hills the steady rise and fall of breathing. To sleep here is not to fall away from the world, but to join it, to enter the same rhythm that carries rivers and rain, sheep and shepherds, cliffs and sea. Sleep becomes less an individual act and more a shared one, the entire land exhaling with you. Folklore would say that in moments like this, the boundary between waking and dreaming is thinner than mist. Perhaps the fairies drift closer now, their music faint but kind. Perhaps ancestors peer from the stars, windows glowing with their gaze. Perhaps the sheep outside lie in fields, counting not grass but breaths, marking your passage into rest. You smile faintly at the thought, amused and comforted at once, and let the humour soften you further. Even dreams are welcome companions tonight. The lantern flickers once more, its glow warm but tired, echoing the hearths in cottages across the valley as fires dim into embers. It reminds you that endings need not be sudden. They are gradual, gentle, the way a day folds into evening, the way rain folds into mist, the way mist folds into stars. You do not need to hurry. Sleep will come at its own pace, steady and sure, like the postman's bicycle, like the shepherd's wave, like the tide returning to shore. And so you surrender, not with effort but with release. The van is your nest, the blanket your sky, the pillow your earth. Outside, Ireland sleeps, rivers slowing, mist thickening, stars flickering, fires dimming. Inside, you are part of that same sleep, carried not away but deeper in. And so our wandering reaches its close. Whether your eyes are open or you've drifted away, thank you for sharing this time. You're always welcome to return whenever you need stillness. Sleep well wherever you are, wherever